Hey everybody, it's Thursday night, and I am Josh Olive with Haven Comics here for Shop Talk, like we do every Thursday night. So that's pretty cool. We have a good time with it. Uh, Tonight we have a really fun show for you because we've got a guy who has just read, and longtime friend of the show. As a matter of fact, we wouldn't have this show without this guy. But he just read through every single issue ever of Amazing Spider-Man. So we're going to get the good, the bad, the ugly, favorite moments, things that made him just throw a book across the room, the whole 9 yards. We're going to see about all of that stuff. So stick around, and we will dive into some Spider-Man tonight. That intro video we have is courtesy of our guest tonight. We wouldn't have that if it weren't for him. That's how awesome this dude is. Totally cool guy. Uh, Not a totally cool guy, just a marginally cool guy. We're going to bring on Alan, our guest host. Alan, how is it? How's things?
Well, this is the part where I usually say something stupid, try to crack a little joke.
You
But
impart some wisdom.
yeah, I try to do a little something for the benefit of the audience. But honestly, I'm so excited for tonight's guest. Look, number one, I love this dude. I love his brother. They are part of this little psychotic Brady bunch that we have going on. You just have to accept it. But I've got a grievance that I need to air with Nick. We just got to bring him on and get this out in the air. Get this out.
Is this Festivus? Is this the airing of grievances?
Yes, this is the airing of grievances. And Nick, just so you'll know, it concerns Saturday night.
Uh-oh. I never know what it's like when a grown man wants to air out grievances with me.
It's super duper Nick.
Super duper Nick. Well, let's just go and get this out in the air. I gotta get
hey, before you do that, let's say hey to our folks in the chat. We only got a couple popped on so far, but Todd, it's always good to see you, sir. And Blue Hellion, man, how you doing? Hope everything is well. This is my favorite comment I think ever, right there. From all the way out in Nebraska.
That's right.
You can hear the echoes. Hey, Ben. Hey, Ben. Hey, Ben. That's awesome.
So what is it, Alan? Let's hear it.
Let's hear this grievance. Do I get to be the judge? Do I get to adjudicate this?
Well, we'll let you decide because Nick and I are going to be the only two that really and truly knows what's going on. It's technically two grievances. Number one, first and foremost, we both know that I won the She-Hulk meme contest. Hands down, nobody beat my She-Hulk meme.
It was totally...
I stayed well within the parameters of the contest. You cannot tell me that I didn't.
Hey, you got to take that up with Dustin and everybody in the chat, but I will tell you, I didn't even know I had actually downloaded it and saved it into that folder. So if you didn't notice, as I was clicking through and it popped up, I was like, oh no. Let's put it this way: it is not a family-friendly show. But if Josh doesn't mind, I'll share it here. I think.
No, we will not be showing
that. If you're not going to share it, I'm not going to share it. What in the world did you do?
I'll text it to you here in a minute.
It was a good one. It was very good. But I don't know. I mean, we can talk She-Hulk. Should we talk She-Hulk, Josh?
We should. Although caveat, I have not gotten to see this week's episode.
I haven't seen him since episode 2, so I'm just being facetious after the whole Saturday Night Live from last week. It is nice to be a part of a more formalized show again, right? Whereas Dustin and I now are just talking schmack.
Yeah, how's that working out for you?
For a while, it was really good, and then we were like, maybe we've lived long enough to see ourselves become that villain.
I was wondering what the deal was with that post that you put out there.
That was actually Dustin.
Oh, was it?
Was it?
Yeah.
I totally thought that was you.
This week it was Dustin. I have been so wrapped up with work and busy, and it's a wild time right now with everything going on that I don't think I posted anything on Instagram since Saturday or Sunday.
Josh, you should be getting the meme that I sent in for the meme contest Saturday night any minute now.
See, I thought you were going to be like, oh, Nick, you got me addicted to manga or something.
Oh, no, hon. This was a flight. Look, the way I look at it, you said a She-Hulk meme, and I stayed well within the parameters. I gave you the best She-Hulk meme that you saw all night long.
You apparently need to have a lawyer when you make contest rules that Alan is going to be participating in.
Yeah, well, the She-Hulk meme we got had nothing to do with a lawyer. It was a whole totally other profession.
It was the oldest profession from the look of it.
that it was.
Good job, Alan. All right, we see
Oh.
other people lurking in the chat. Who else hanging out there? Because you're not talking. You jump on and let us know you're out there.
It's incredibly important that you conversate, because without a conversation going on in the chat, we don't know what you guys want to talk about.
It's Kyle. What's happening, man? How are you?
Send some hearts.
So actually, before we get into the Spider-Man conversation, I was going to ask you. You made a comment on Babylon. You and Dustin both a few weeks ago about scaling way back on like your pull list and stuff. Are you just any particular reason why? Just tired of certain books? Or?
So I think Josh and I actually had this conversation. So I mean, the other week I practically killed my pull list outside of Spawn, and I tried to add more manga, but there's not a whole lot of manga right now, so that I can still, put some money in there with Josh. But then every time I bring my daughter in, I feel like I'm spending way more than my pull list. So I think Josh is going to be just fine. Okay.
I love your daughter.
I mean, we spent what, $70 or $80 last week on some board games and not last week, but last time on like some board games and bags.
Yeah.
And that was just, that was the first card swipe. I think we swiped 2 or 3 more times after that. But anywho's, so really the biggest reason for me is when I started reading Spider-Man, it literally consumed all of my time in terms of reading, especially the Silver Age stuff, reading 3 issues a day. And we're doing it now with Fantastic Four. And we can talk about that too a little bit, but I'm reading.
I knew you were going to, but I didn't know you had already started.
Yep, we started September 1. So, and Dustin's actually doing it with me. Justin was, and then he got COVID, so he kind of bowed out. But we're reading all the Fantastic Four. Dustin's committed to at least volume 1. But so back to the pull list question. So why I basically killed it and scaled it way back. Dustin's biggest thing is he wasn't finding anything he was really enjoying reading, period. After The Last Ronin kind of took a dive. After Something's Killing Children kind of took a dive.
Well, hang on, let's talk about The Last Ronin real quick.
Yeah.
Everybody was so on board with that book.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, wow, everybody. I mean, this resurgence of turtles across the globe, everybody was excited. There were how many variant covers of number 1? Like 75, something.
I've got like all of them.
Between the store exclusives and stuff.
Yeah.
And then as Last Ronin got further into it, it didn't just like cool off. It like took a nosedive.
Yeah.
Like into the deepest chasm of the Marianas Trench. What was up with that?
So from Dustin's perspective, especially, I mean, I'm not a huge Turtles fan, right? I have some of the books back here, and I'm a casual fan. I think they're cool. But Dustin, who's always been a diehard fan, he saw this as an opportunity to get back to the OG Turtles, right? A story about the OG Turtles, and even though 3 out of 4 died, that's what he was still excited about. That tale, the old Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird verse, if you will, not necessarily kind of the weird furry stuff they got going on now, but just turtles, right? And that's the focus. And so anyways, that's what he was really excited about, most people thought, when in turn it was a little bit of focus on Turtle towards the end, with a huge focus on the new Casey Jones and April. And they, it was that nostalgia was just kind of ripped away. It was kind of a bait and switch, kind of what like they'll do with a new Batman or a new superhero with the title, or new Superman. Instead of just telling that story, they'll bait and switch you and say, hey, we're going to tell you a story on the Turtles, and it turns out it's more heavily focused on a brand new character, Casey Jones, that people who are coming into comic books who have been long-term Turtle fans, they don't care about. Nobody wanted to read about Casey Jones. They were all pumped up about reading that Turtle story. So, and I know some people were thrilled about it, but in my opinion, and what I've heard, and not just from Dustin, but a ton of other people and his group that love Turtles just as much, that was really, I think, the big issue. I mean, I don't know if either one of you guys are massive Turtles fans and what your perspectives were, but I think a lot of it was the fact it felt like a bit of a bait and switch to them. And Dustin, there were still moments Dustin absolutely loved more than anything, but it was certainly it was different than what they expected, I think.
Well, I'm not a huge Turtles fan. I like the Turtles.
Yeah.
Especially the OG Turtles. That was awesome back in the day. But I didn't have any heartburn with it because, and I don't know if I just read a different, solicit going into the series or what, but I read this as kind of a the way that Marvel did that series of the end stories, like the last Avenger story, the last Hulk story. And I read this as like, this is the last Turtle story.
Yeah.
So I read it from that perspective. I knew it was going to not be a happy ending for the Turtles.
And he totally wanted the it was Michelangelo, right?
Right?
He totally wanted Michelangelo to die at the end. That's what he said from the beginning. After issue 1, he was like, "This is the way it needs to end." It was that weird focus shift away from, you know, giving them the happy ending and things like that, and really putting a huge focus on like the whole Casey Jones thing, and all of a sudden now, if you're just around turtles for a while, you can develop your mutation and kind of that weird thing, you know, that I think upset, not necessarily upset, but kind of lost a lot of people's interest. So I think if they would have just removed that, we'll say that again.
Didn't it ultimately end up being like Casey Jones's daughter? Or I mean, didn't it?
It was Casey Jones's daughter, even though Casey Jones and April actually already had a daughter. I think it was called Smoke or Shadow, something like that.
Like you name your kid.
Yeah. But
go away, Smoke.
It was something like that. I think it might have been Shadow Jones or something like that. But it was very weird, kind of the way she was introduced, and it was just, Dustin felt like it was pretty clumsy. So I don't know. I mean, I understand his perspective. I never finished reading it all the way through, other than when we did our edited videos, I kind of saw it. But I definitely get why people weren't thrilled, so to speak.
Yeah, I watched a lot of actually I watched all the Dustin's videos whenever he would do them on it, and you could tell just by the way he was, because I'm not a turtle fan.
Yeah,
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I don't bash the turtles, but it's not something I'm gonna go seek out.
Yeah,
and you could tell just through his video series on it that it was just taking a nosedive and just getting worse and worse and worse. And it kind of seemed like there toward the end, it was almost like the reader was begging to be put out of their misery, just end it and be done with it.
Yeah, and another thing, I mean, if you look at the release schedule, it was like what, over the course of a year or a year and a half plus delays.
Way too long. Yeah.
So that definitely ruined a lot of people's enthusiasm for it too, I think.
They went with that doomsday clock release schedule.
For sure.
That's the thing. A lot of comic creators, I mean, I'll talk to young comic creators, folks just starting out. Oh, I got this great story I want to do, all this stuff. And the first thing I caution them, other than providing a quality product, is have enough issues in the can so that you can maintain your schedule, because nothing will kill a comic faster, no matter how good it is. Nothing will kill a comic faster than a delayed release schedule that pushes out forever and nobody can keep up with it. They're like, oh, I forgot what happened by the time the next one comes out, so I don't care anymore.
Exactly.
That'll kill a comic book.
Didn't there used to be kind of like a standing thing back in or like an unwritten rule back in the 80s or not early 90s about they actually stayed 13 issues ahead of schedule, like Marvel and DC?
From a planning perspective, they did, but not from a production perspective.
Gotcha.
I think that would be almost impossible.
They didn't have the pencils and inks and all that stuff done. The standing rule typically is to stay 3 issues ahead with completed pencils and inks and colors and all that. If you're 3 issues ahead, then you can weather bumps and delays. If you're not, then every single bump and delay causes a problem. It's a foolhardy thing to do. And I get why a small independent would do that, because they only have so much manpower, right? But you get your bigs like DC and Marvel, and they're running delays on books. That's just not acceptable.
Yeah. Which I'm very curious to see how DC manages over the next year. That's a whole nother topic of interest.
Yeah, that it is. But you were talking about cutting your pull list.
Yeah. So came in, and the reason was because I really found this huge love for Silver Age comic books through at least the Spider-Man ones, and Fantastic Four has been, pretty solid in the Silver Age. But all of my time was focused there, right? And then I've also started recently picking up, trying to read some novels and things like that too, outside of just comic books. So like I read Shane, and then right now I'm reading The Hobbit. Probably going to finish off the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Then I'm looking at some of these other.
Now, are you reading The Hobbit to your little girl?
No, she wouldn't understand all of that right now. She has the attention span to read like a small Bluey book, and then it's done. So, just not right now. But I think she'll love it. I mean, I am shocked how much I love it. I'm also shocked at how much the movie's changed the book. right? And you know how I feel about change.
Well, I'll tell you, the movies were based on The Hobbit,
Yeah.
but they were also based on all the information in Appendix D of the Lord of the Rings.
Gotcha. And I've not gotten there.
There's a whole appendix. It's kind of funny. You read like the Fellowship of the Ring, and then the Two Towers, and then the Return of the King looks like a big book, but it's not nearly as big as it looks because there's appendices at the end.
Yeah.
If you didn't know, the Lord of the Rings was supposed to be one book.
Did not know that.
But it was too big. It was too big for them. They didn't have the technology at the time to print it and have it hold together and do all that stuff that it needed to do. And so they made a editorial decision to break it into 3 books.
Interesting.
So there's this huge section of appendices at the end, and the appendices really describe what was going on. One of Tolkien's favorite things as he's writing these books is to have the stories told from the perspective of people in the world. So The Hobbit is actually written by Bilbo.
Yeah.
So it's got Bilbo's it's got his biases and his ignorance, the things that he didn't know were going on in the world. And so in the appendices to Lord of the Rings, it describes a lot of that stuff.
Oh, very neat. So some of the, okay, very cool.
So some of the stuff that they put in the movies makes sense based on the appendices.
Yeah,
however, a great deal of the stuff they put in the movies is utter trash.
Oh, well, see, I will tell you, and this is where I have a hard time, right? And I don't know if you want me to finish talking about the pull list. Basically, I pulled the pull list because I found joy in other things outside of modern comic books currently. And that's basically what it is. Manga, Hobbit, Silver Age comic books. And I'm going to continue this for a while. And I literally took all of my last, maybe 3, 4, 5 years worth of pull lists and just dropped them off at your shop and said, here, sell these, which you were able to sell a bunch of them already, the Star Wars stuff.
I was.
Well, so if you decide to get back into the fold, your boy Zdarsky is killing it on Batman and Daredevil.
Yeah. So I don't know, right? I mean, and I still have all the Spawn stuff. I still have all my manga through Josh. And of course, when I bring in Ellie, we're going to be spending money regardless, but there just is not a current set of modern comic books outside of Kanto. I kept Kanto that truly interest me and keep me engaged versus when I'm reading Silver Age, some of the back issue stuff. And I'm learning so much and we can talk about that more, but so the Tolkien stuff and the Hobbit, where were we going with that a second ago before
you were about to tell me, I think that you like the movies or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay. The movies and the changes. So if you guys don't know, and I think Christine, if more than anybody, she's watched enough of our stuff. And if you follow us on Instagram, you know, I hate when you change source material. Okay. I hate it. I loathe it. There's a reason certain things are at a high level. It's because they were done well and they don't need some writer or editor or anything to do with a movie or TV show to go and say, well, I know better than the source material and I think this interpretation is better. I don't like that. I think it's kind of anywho.
I think when it's well done,
it could be fine.
It's phenomenal. And I'll give you a case in point with the Lord of the Rings movies. Have you finished The Hobbit yet?
No, I'm Apple Book says I'm 85% of the way through. So
okay.
I'll probably finish it tonight or tomorrow.
Well, early in the Fellowship of the Ring, you meet a character named Tom Bombadil. He is a weird character.
I'm assuming they cut him out for a reason.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He makes sense if you understand the greater
Tolkien.
Well, the greater vision that Tolkien was trying to create. Tolkien was initially trying to create a mythology for England.
Yes.
He's like, Greece has mythology.
Yep.
All these other places have a mythology. We don't really have that here. And he was trying to create a mythology, a national mythology for England. And Tom Bombadil is a weird character. He's very, very, very strange. He comes in singing and wearing bright yellow boots. And he's married to a dryad. I mean, just all this weird stuff. And so they cut him from the movie. And I thought that was one of the smarter choices they could have made, because trying to, like, the audience to be like, who was that guy? What was that all about? If it doesn't tie into the whole world, it makes no sense at all. And from a plot perspective, Tom Bombadil could have just ended the movie, right, like the whole quest right there. Like, oh, I'll take care of this for you guys.
Yeah.
And it would have been over.
So, and that's what I was kind of alluding to with what I was saying is, 9 times out of 10, like I hate when you change the source material, especially when you do Uncle Fester's Gore the God Butcher. I had to put that out there, and my love for Gore, and that was just such a spit in the face to Jason Aaron and that artist, by the way. But I will tell you, The Hobbit. Since I love the Lord of the Rings, but I was never a Lord of the Rings. Like if I had a rank, it'd be like Star Wars, and like Lord of the Rings down here. But I remember when The Hobbit came out and I went and watched it in theaters, I immediately fell in love with The Hobbit. I thought everything about that movie, the way it was told, the mood of the movie was perfect. I bet you, I bet you a minimum I've seen that movie 100 times since it's come out. The first one, easily, because after it came out on DVD, I went and bought it. And literally just about every night I would turn it on and watch it. And that's either what I'd fall asleep to, or I would do something else while it was on. But I bet you in like the past, since I started reading it, I've had it on every single night since I started reading The Hobbit. Every single night.
Now, when you say the movies, you're talking about the Peter Jackson Hobbit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not
the
the
weird
old
animated
Hobbit. Okay.
Yeah. So I was going to go back and watch the animated Hobbit from 76 or something like that.
Yeah.
And Bilbo Baggins looked like a pervert. And I'm like, no, I can't watch this. It would ruin it for me. And I don't mean to be so straight up about that, but literally that's what went into my mind when I watched the trailer. I'm like, no, he looks like a little pervert. I can't.
Bilbo Baggins just always looked like Mr. Fezziwig from A Christmas Carol to me. I was like, hi, I'm just fat and happy.
Yeah.
I always thought he looked like he had a chia pet on his head.
Dude, well, that it was too, for sure.
Weird. But I love the Peter Jackson movies. And then what I'm seeing is I've read through.
See, the first book,
yeah,
the first movie of the Peter Jackson movie was very faithful.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Very, very faithful. And I
from the time they got to Lake Town.
Well, once it got into Mirkwood, it was like Bjorn and Mirkwood, all that. It was like, what happened to my movie?
Yeah, in the orcs. So in that, like, I always liked, what is it, Azog, whatever, the white orc, and he's nowhere in the book. I think he's mentioned like one time.
Yeah.
And so that whole storyline, and then the brown wizard, which I don't think has been mentioned at all.
Radagast the Brown, yeah, he's in the books.
But he's in the Hobbit, because I've not seen him been mentioned unless I missed it somehow.
He got a mention. I think it was in the Hobbit. If it wasn't the Hobbit, it was definitely in the appendices. But now Radagast gets a mention. There are other wizards as well.
Yeah,
but we learned their names at one point, but they're way off somewhere else.
Yeah, but you definitely like not as big as a role, right? And you're absolutely right about Mirkwood. Now that you say that, in certain parts they're super true to it. Other parts you're like, oh my god. And I'm right at the point where Bilbo's talking to Smaug, and that's a little bit different. Although I always thought it was stupid in The Hobbit when Smaug was talking back. That was always my biggest hang up. But before I had read the source material, I'm like, all of this awesomeness, and now you're gonna have a dragon talk. I thought that was kind of weird. But now I'm reading it, and I'm like, what about the Eagles? I haven't watched it yet, but that's why I'm reading the book so I can complain about it.
We'll talk about it.
So, but anyway, so
this is the best Spider-Man show I've ever been on, by the way.
Yeah. Well, hey, it is what it is. But like I've truly fallen in love with Tolkien, right? And his whole concept and his whole universe he's created. I think more than anything.
Wait until you read the Silmarillion, man.
Oh, I'm really excited about that one. But like to the point to where I went out and started buying his art books and stuff like that because he was an artist.
I'm gonna grab something and show you guys.
Okay. But like I went out and started grabbing art books. I'm actually trying to find a place, and maybe somebody can help me. But I'd like to get some of these, like his original sketches. I'd like to get those in print and actually hang them in my house. Like that's how much I've really fallen in love with this whole universe, and not from like a nerdy standpoint of like, oh, I'm gonna go learn Elvish or something, but like, just there's something so special and sincere about this, and such a love that like. It's just such a wonderful thing. But
there's two places that might be able to do that for you.
Yeah.
I would check the FedEx Kinko's on University.
So I want to buy one on like a nice, not just make my own.
Okay. Well, I know there's also a place in Athens, and I think the name of it is Sundries or something like that. And I think they can do stuff like that, to basically scan it, blow it up, make it bigger, poster.
And I've looked, and I've not seen many like places that might sell this kind of stuff. I know Tolkien, the estate's kind of weird about selling their stuff, but
Yep.
like there is this one specifically is the one I really want to get. And to the point where I've almost thought about buying a second one of these and just cutting the page out and mat it to where you can't really see that it's been cut. Because this wasn't terribly expensive. I love that Rivendell, but it's not that one that I want to do.
Well, check this out, dude.
Show it.
I'm going to embiggen myself. This is the box set of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings that I got when I was 12 years old.
Oh, that's awesome.
They all 4 books used to fit in the box, but I don't know, they've swollen. Now one of them doesn't fit. So
yeah.
So here's the thing. I started to read it a lot, and I'll talk about that here in a sec. But you see this piece of paper?
Yeah.
I don't know if it shows up clear enough. But, all right, yeah, this has my little handwriting on it for Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. If you can see that at all.
Oh, man, that's how many times you've read it?
When I was 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
And then that's the Silmarillion down there.
Oh, man. So you are a super, super fan.
When I was going to the public school in England, it wasn't much of a challenge. But what I did every single day, I'd get on the bus in the morning and I would start The Hobbit and I would read it that day, finish it that night. And the next day I would go through the 2 Towers. And the next day I would go through the 2 Towers, or sorry, Fellowship of the Ring, the 2 Towers, and Return of the King. And then I would go through the Silmarillion. That one usually took a couple of days. But then I would just go through that cycle every week for an entire school year.
Whoa.
And then some. And I read other stuff during that time, and I did my schoolwork and all that stuff. But yeah, it's
that's wild.
I'm a little overdue for a rereading. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
But I've kept up that list since 1987.
That is truly amazing. And what's cool, and I thought you were about to show me something else. That's even cooler because a guy just offered me somebody in the community, he saw I was reading it, and I've talked about buying the leather bound with the 24 karat gold inlays, those books, those versions. And Ryan, I hope he's watching, but he goes, really, you're going to buy the books after you've read it? And I'm like, look, I read stuff digitally. It's way easier at night when my wife's asleep and it's 12 o'clock at night. Like, that's just easy for me. But I want something just like I do with all my omnibus to be able to collect and love. But anyway, so somebody reached out and it's a second edition of I forget what it's called. It starts with the M, from like 1967. The Lord of the Rings, Twin Towers, and
the 2 Towers.
2 Towers, sorry. The Fellowship of the Ring, 2 Towers. What's the third?
Return of the King.
Return of the King. I don't know why I can't think of it. But I haven't bought it yet because I'm like, what if I don't love it as much as I love The Hobbit? You know, I don't want to spend that kind of money. But I really wish I would have read something like this when I was a kid. I know, right? He's
very passionate. My knowledge has dropped off some over the years because it's been a minute since I've reread them all.
But if you've read it, however many times, it had to be 50, 60?
If I recall correctly, the last time I have read the Silmarillion, let's see, 1, 2, 3.
If I would have read The Hobbit when I was a kid, it would have had such an impact on me. I swear, it's one of those books. But we weren't forced to read.
Tell off myself. I've never read it.
You should give it it's an easy read.
I've read the Silmarillion 67 times.
Good Lord.
And The Hobbit I have read, let's see, 1, 2, 3.
See, I love horror novels. I've just always have.
I don't like that stuff.
The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings I've read 154 times.
Jesus Christ. They really should make you like king of Amazon Prime needs to call you and figure out what action. But you know what? They would probably just fire you like they did the rest of the Tolkien advisors.
Yeah.
You see that face? He's like, I'm not getting into it right now.
Yeah.
But like I said, when you were gone, I mean, I've just fallen in love with Tolkien as a whole and his whole universe and kind of what he's put in. I mean, this right here, I got it in the other day and I started flipping through it. And I'm like, you can just tell the love he had for this just by looking at his artwork. And and like there's this whole universe outside of the Lord of the Rings and stuff like that he's done that I'm very intrigued by. I don't know if it's in this or something else. I would say probably Lord of the Rings at this point.
That's tough right there. Oh,
There's
I don't
only
know.
what, a few hundred G.I. Joe comics?
Well, there's 300 plus, or they're about to be. Yeah, there's 300. Going to be 300 issues
Yeah.
of the regular plus GI Joe special missions, plus other iterations of GI Joe, plus Action Force, which is GI Joe, but they don't call it that in Europe because people are like, "What is this GI business?"
Oh yeah, government issue.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know, man. But I'm shocked at how much I really do love The Hobbit, and I'm hoping The Lord of the Rings is just as good.
I'll tell
And
you, The Lord of the Rings is spectacular. What's fun, The Hobbit was a story he was telling his kids, right? He was writing that story for his kids. And he wanted to continue in that world that he had created. So he wrote Lord of the Rings. And when he wrote Lord of the Rings, he was like, one of his foundational elements in Lord of the Rings clearly is, I don't know, the ring.
yeah,
So he had to actually go back and retcon um, the the game of riddles with Gollum.
I love
Because
that.
originally Gollum was just like, oh, well, you win. Here's the ring.
Oh my
And he's
gosh.
like, I can't do that.
I'm telling you, there were certain parts where I could literally, I've never read a book in like an actual novel and smiled. And like the riddles, the blunt the knives bend the fork song, that, I mean, just made me so happy to know that what I loved from the movies was true to the books.
The elves making fun of the dwarves.
Yeah.
He didn't even put that piece in the movie. I don't remember where the dwarves are trying to cross the tiny little bridge and the elves are laughing at them.
Yeah. Just all of that stuff. And I'm just, yeah, it really, I'm glad that I started reading this for sure.
Me too. I'm excited about that. That's good for you.
So I'll probably, I might end up rereading it one more time, like as I go through. But anywho's, it's been
you will discover more and more things as you go through it, and it's pretty awesome. The Lord of the Rings, if you're like me, you'll appreciate even more.
Yeah.
Because it grew. It's like it took that mythology, but it grew up a little bit. So it's less child focused.
Mhm.
Less, although you've got a little kid, so it's maybe you view it differently. But for me, the Lord of the Rings was amazing, and the Peter Jackson movies of the Lord of the Rings I thought were spectacular.
They're masterpieces.
I thought they were absolutely spectacular, and they made some extensive and rather critical changes to the source material.
Yeah.
And it's a sign of how well it was done that not only did I not hate it, I was like, I get that. Yeah. I understand why you did that, and I don't disagree.
Yeah. So, and back to the whole source material thing, what I was getting at with The Hobbit and the movies and how much I love the movies is that I was really worried it was going to ruin my opinion on the movies. And I know there are some people, which it sounds like you kind of believe that the Hobbit movies were not, the second and third anyways, at least were not well done.
No.
But I feel that way a little bit, but I still love them so much. It's hard for me to change my mind, even after reading, 85% of the book. Right. And I think it'll definitely come down to the Battle of the Five Armies. And if that even, and don't tell me, but if that even is a real thing, because I feel like that's not actually happening. I feel like that was kind of made up for.
Battle of the Five Armies is a real thing.
Okay. All right. Because I was nervous. I was like, tell me I didn't waste a whole movie loving it just to not even see that in the book. I would be pissed.
Battle of Five Armies, very much a real thing. A couple of things that bothered me. One of them, well, several plot things that bothered me. The whole forced elf dwarf romance. Like, what in the world is that nonsense? That's just not going to happen. Also,
came out with Evangelina Lilly.
Lilly, yeah. And also, he barely had any beard. That's not dwarfish. I mean, like, he had stubble. Like, is he a Miami Vice dwarf? What is he going? That was not cool.
You saying I can't be a dwarf?
You'd have to let that grow out, man.
This is literally months and months and months of growth. No trimming.
See, you make mine look lush and thick and gorgeous.
It's amazing.
That's why you're my favorite guest so far. I have the second best beard on the show.
Don't worry, though. I got the second best at faking hair, too. Look at this.
How old are you?
Old enough to lose my hair and be disappointed by it.
No.
See, But the other thing that bothered me about the Hobbit movies was they relied a lot more on CGI
Yes.
than practical effects, and I thought like Azog and they
Yeah.
looked terrible. They looked awful.
In the theaters, it wasn't as bad, but watching it on this super high end 4K, TV that they have now, it does not look. It did not age well. But that's why I'll only watch it. I tried it once, and I'm like, no, I can't. So I only will watch it on like my crappier TV because it doesn't look as bad.
Well, yeah, it was not good. I
Yeah.
looked at it. I'm like, why did they go from these awesome effects to these garbage effects? That was bothersome. Never mind the bizarre changes that they made to like adding Legolas in. Like, come on, guys, that was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of that stuff. I mean, you could tell it was more Peter Jackson verse than and I hate that. But God, I still can't. It's one of those things where like now I understand why some people love something so much that even when it is bad, they can't say it.
Well, case in point for me,
yeah.
like, all right, I saw the Anne of Green Gables movies before I read the books,
Okay.
and they're two totally separate things, and I love
Yeah.
them both.
Yeah.
I absolutely love them both. I was 12 years old. I had been in this car wreck. My leg's all messed up. I can't go much of anywhere. My parents are super excited about some TV show about a redheaded 12-year-old orphan girl. And I'm like, what in the world is this garbage?
And Josh
This
is
is going to
having a
be the
super
worst
duper
thing in the
time.
world. I saw her, and I mean, I was 12. She was 12. I was smitten. And that was all she wrote. I was like tuning in every week after that. And then I got the books, and I loved them, and they're great. And just a whole different but plot wise they hit a divergence point and they just go 100% different directions, and yet I love them both equally. So I get where you're coming from. I understand that.
It's hard. It is, especially because again, I tell you, the Hobbits were my favorite, and specifically the first one too. There's something about that, and it's after the dwarf sequence. Whenever it's really about the Shire, right? I think it honestly comes down to the Shire. Is that place looks like the most elegant and wonderful and most peaceful place in the world to live. And every time I watch it, it brings me peace, if that makes sense, and calming. And Alan, I know you look so enthused by this conversation, but if you've never watched it, I'm telling you, there is something just so wonderful about that opening, just all of it. You know what I mean?
And that was Tolkien trying to capture the idyllic British countryside. And he did it brilliantly. I was sad because in New Zealand, after they finished Lord of the Rings, they tore down all of the stuff they had built in the Shire. But they rebuilt it all for Lord of the Rings or for The Hobbit, and afterwards they kept it.
Good.
So now you can actually go visit.
I heard it's kind of gone downhill a little bit, though.
It probably has. It's been years, but
there's a place in Mississippi that has a lot of stuff set up like that, and it's like an overnight place. You can literally go spend like several days there, and they have. Yeah, I can't. I
want to go stay in a hobbit hole.
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit bigger than a hobbit hole naturally, but
let's take a trip, go stay in a hobbit hole, and just read The Hobbit while we're there. I mean, that'd be perfect.
With a warm fire.
If
a lot of food.
I want to go crawl into a hole in the ground with the two of y'all, I'm going to read Nick Clive Barker books all night long. We're not reading The Hobbit.
Alan, if you were about like 5-6 inches shorter, dude, you'd be a good hobbit.
I probably would, but
you'd be excellent.
Not a hobbit. Sorry, I meant to say dwarf.
Hobbit, dwarf. It doesn't matter.
Just need the hair.
Yeah, just need the hair.
You have hairy feet, though.
Do what?
Said you'd have to have hairy feet to be a hobbit.
No, I don't have hairy feet. So, but if I'm a dwarf, I get a battle axe, so I'm good with that.
Dude,
that's true.
Oh, I'm trying to decide who's my favorite dwarf. Whether it's the what's his name at the end of the Battle of Five Armies.
Like Bomber.
Yeah, it is very elegant and peaceful.
I mean, actually, mine's Sleepy. That's the best dwarf, but
I don't think you're allowed to call those dwarves anymore. I think there's something else.
No, they're dwarves. They'll always be dwarves. I don't do the PC thing. Walt Disney said they were dwarves. Damn it, they're dwarves.
You know what's funny is Snow White came out the same time as The Hobbit.
Oh yeah.
And in both cases, they turned centuries old traditions on their head because until then, dwarves were always depicted as evil and bad.
Really did not know that. And that was actually something I was going to ask you. And I know we need to probably talk about Spider-Man because,
Rule.
but I'm enjoying this so much. We should do a Lord of the Rings thing. Anywho's, so
yeah, we'll do a Lord of the Rings thing, and we'll talk about Spider-Man on that episode.
Here we go.
It's been 40 minutes, and I think we said Spider-Man twice. It's okay. Last week, all you guys did was talk about Disney, and my wife loved every minute of it. She was commenting and like so excited, and she is so thrilled about your next guest on October 6th.
6th, yes. Yeah, AJ from the Disney Food Blog is going to be on October 6th, and we are pumped.
Yeah, my wife is pumped.
Excited for that one.
I have no clue who she is, and I'm glad for all of your guys' excitement. But my wife made me like rewind it just so she could double check who it was. She was so thrilled, and she loved all the advice, by the way, from last week.
Do you ever eat at restaurants at Disney World?
Reluctantly, and I've yet to enjoy one. Like really enjoy.
Are you serious? You've yet to enjoy one at all?
Dude, when you're spending $30, $40, $50 and it's quick service food. Now granted, like we've eaten it, we've dined with Mickey.
That's the place I was thinking about. I thought it was Mississippi.
Oh, that's cool.
Your wife knew who we was talking about with AJ, right?
Oh yeah. Like I said, she made me go back and make sure that it was who she thought it was. She's very excited. She's gonna watch it for sure.
So if you check IG, I just sent you the link to AJ's YouTube channel so you can check some of the stuff out. She's got some great videos.
Yeah, I'm sure. And like I said, it's just you guys know my wife is pure Disney. I'm just there because I have to be, and that's why we're going. We've been every year since I know how. Like one year we went twice. Yay!
You cannot wait to get on. It's a Small World. You're gonna be singing that song and bopping that head.
That is actually one of my most favorite rides at the park, if I'm honest.
See, I'm a Haunted Mansion and Peter Pan's Flight guy.
Don't like either one of those. Just don't care enough about them. Alan, real quick, Dustin said to message him about that tonight.
Okay.
But where was I going with this? Oh, but like my wife is such a Disney nut. I told this to Josh. I didn't offer her. I said, hey, we can go to Hawaii this year or we can go to Disney. Which one would you choose? Thinking naturally it's going to be Hawaii. She thought about it for all of 30 seconds, and her response was, would you be mad at me if I chose Disney World? I'm like, no, Sky, it's up to you.
So have you been to Hawaii?
No.
So I have been to Hawaii, and you're actually saving money by going to Disney World.
Oh, I'm sure. No, I knew. And I was going to take some of my RSUs and stuff and sell to be able to go, but
that's what I said. She should have said Hawaii.
I told her. Now, where I messed up is I have a dream trip. I want to go to Japan and spend as much time as possible as I can there and eat all the food I can. And I figured it out. We're going to go to Japan Disney. That's the only way I'm going to get there.
Tokyo Disney, absolutely. Tokyo Disney Sea. Holy Lord, yes.
So, I was like, oh man, I should have planned that instead of going this year. But Japan's been shut down to foreigners. You want to talk? They're a bit what's the word I'm looking for here?
Smart.
No, I was looking for a different word without saying it. Anywho's, they're not so much a fan of foreigners, but they've been shutting it down. And I'm just, it's not worth the risk to try to invest all this time, energy, and money and it fall through. But I think we're definitely gonna anime and manga.
No, isn't it technically gaijin? Is that what they call us?
Gaijin, yeah.
I don't know. No, I thought that. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
It is.
And that's not, individual people. It's more so the government. But yeah, I definitely want to go there and go to all of these different places and honestly spend more time in the country than necessarily like Tokyo or something, because the country there and the mountains in Japan are just beautiful looking.
That they are.
But yeah, so that's how I'm going to convince my wife to go to Tokyo or to Japan.
That's a good plan. I approve that plan.
I'd also like to go to the Mario World and see the big Gundam. That's
fair. Did you see the Transformer? They just had a Soundwave Transformer that's full size, transforms down. I think it was Soundwave. No, it wasn't Soundwave. It was a car. It transforms into a car.
I didn't see that.
Two guys sitting in it, and it transforms from the robot to the car and back to the robot, and it can walk and it can drive.
Cool. That's terrifying.
Really cool. Who's that you got there, Alan?
So I'm actually at my sister's, and this is one of her dogs. And believe it or not, this is not the one that I like.
That's a big old wiener.
Well, she looks really upset at you.
So I don't know. She just come wandering in here, which she never comes in here and bothers me. My sister and them are out of town, so she's looking for somebody that's going to feed her.
Well, you can't blame her for that. That's a smart dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
my
speaking of
wife
smart stuff,
would die for one of those.
let's talk some Spider-Man.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we should go ahead and at least talk about it a little bit because I really talked that up in the intro for this.
And then we can get to the Hobbit again.
Yeah, we can always come back.
I'm
to
just
the Hobbit.
kidding. All right, so Spider-Man, what do you want to know? I've read.
Well, let's tell people what you did first of all.
So started January 1, and I'm going to continue to do this until I get bored of it, but I'm going to read all of everything. But I started with Spider-Man AF-15, January 1, started with reading 3 issues a day until I was finished. And that was the plan. Like, generally, it was going to take me, when I did the math, depending on where they were current, it was somewhere it was going to end in like October, early November. And I finished up mid-August, early August, something like that. And I could have finished well beforehand, but oh my God, modern Spider-Man. But anyway, so 3 issues a day, every single annual, a ton of tie-ins. So especially when you got to like Clone Saga, Superior Spider-Man was a part of that, which I think they calculate that as actually Amazing Spider-Man, because for a while, Josh, and if I'm not mistaken, they didn't actually produce Amazing Spider-Man. It was just Superior. Am I right with that? And they might have done like 1 or 2s in between, but the way I looked at the dates. So anyways, I did a lot of tie-ins, all the annuals, anything that had Amazing Spider-Man, I read it. I also read a ton of Peter Parker and a ton of Web too, but the focus was Amazing Spider-Man. And I read all of them up until the most recent issue that have come out, because I'm just not so thrilled about it, but I'm going to have to read them.
We like to call that creative numbering. There.
Oh, we could talk about that too. I did read some of that.
That's
Dan
creative
Slott
numbering is
finally
how they got there.
Yeah.
So you read all that.
Yes, over 1,000.
So let's talk about it. A couple of big picture things first. When you were going into this, were you a Spider-Man fan before you started reading all this, or
no?
Did you just like have a passing acquaintance and be like, "Oh, I know who that is"?
No. So whenever I first started reading it, I really had never read much Spider-Man comic books. I think the most Spider-Man I had read was actually when he was in Venom. I knew, obviously, everybody knows the Tobey Maguire movies. I love the Andrew Garfield movies. And I always thought Tom Holland was okay, but not really my favorite. But I really wanted to, the whole purpose of this was to really grow, learn, and understand comic books better. Because I feel like if I'm going to critique something or have an opinion, a strong opinion on something, good or bad, I don't want to be the guy that somebody goes, well, why do you think that way? And then you go, well, that's just how I feel. I want to be able to say, okay, what is the saying? There's an old saying, but anyways, where I can say, hey, I've read it and I know, and here's why I feel the way I do. Basically the reason why I got into comic books is because I wanted to know kind of where the source material for Endgame and the Infinity War and all of that stuff and all of that came from. So for me, it was really more about learning. So, but I wasn't a massive fan of Spider-Man. I thought the Spider-Man 1 was good from Tobey Maguire. I thought Amazing Spider-Man was fantastic with Andrew Garfield and Gwen Stacy. And I still believe that even now, how great that first one was. But no, just a very casual fan.
So how would you describe yourself now? Are you a Spider-Man fan?
I am up until mid-90s, massive Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane fan for sure.
Yep.
I think
if you love it enough to hate what it has become, then you're a Spider-Man fan.
Huge, yes, to the point to where I've spent thousands on Spider-Man keys.
How much was that? Could you say it a little louder for the people in the back row?
Thousands.
Okay,
and
so with the falling out, do you think it was? I mean, everybody knows maximum clonage. It just started tanking and going downhill, but I kind of want to tend to believe sometimes that it actually started like right around maximum carnage.
Honestly, I enjoyed all of that.
See, to me, it just seemed like Maximum Carnage was Spider-Man's version of the fear state that we just went through with Batman. It took way too long to tell the dang story.
Keep in mind, though, and again, I want everybody to like when I talk about my opinions on this, I read these within a week, right, or days sometimes, or even less than a day. If I really love the storyline. So for you, whenever you originally read it, it might have been months or a year,
Forever.
It was.
or 2 years in some cases. For me, no big deal. It was a couple of days. So, and I love reading comic books that way, right? That batch
You like to
reading.
binge them?
Yes. And like at the end of Spider-Man, I was like, Jesus, what do I do with my life? I read manga if you want to know the answer. I caught up on all my manga. But I love reading that way in general, just batch reading stuff. But I didn't feel that way. I felt like it immediately was trash. Not trash. Honestly, Larson is kind of a down point for me, but even then it wasn't the worst. But it truly lost, I felt like, what made Spider-Man and Peter Parker great. And I say it because I think Peter Parker and Spider-Man are two different characters.
Agreed.
Right? And when you have Peter Parker hitting his wife, that's an issue for me. When you have Ben Reilly come in and actually the guy you've been reading for decades is not actually Spider-Man, it's somebody else and it's a clone, that's an issue for me. And from that point forward, up until I think Michelini, and then everything after, I felt like everything that was true about Spider-Man has been missing, right? And there's no more love. It's, well, we have to keep Spider-Man relevant or relatable, but they're not keeping him relatable. They're just dogging on him every chance they get to destroy his life. And I don't think people want that. They want hope. They want joy. That was something you said one time, Josh, was I was kind of talking to you and I couldn't really place the word of what it was, why I love certain eras. It was because it was joyful, right? It wasn't, let's just bag on Peter Parker because of the Parker luck. And that's why I really enjoyed David Michelini's. And I know there was some weird stuff, but you felt like there was some joy there between him and Mary Jane and some hope. And again, there were some weird things, don't get me wrong, but I felt like that was the last moment where we really felt like there was true love and joy and stop killing Aunt May and stop marrying Aunt May off. Aunt May is the biggest hoochie mom in all of Spider-Man, though, by the way. And I'm not dogging her for it.
She has made some questionable romantic choices.
I'm not dogging on her, okay? Except for the Doc Ock thing. That was the dumbest thing in all of comic books, I think. But she's a bit of a hoochie mama. You know what I'm saying?
So let's talk about that for a second. How weird is that? She marries Doc Ock, and then she becomes his aunt.
Yeah, dude,
that's
so
not weird at all.
I know.
Like somebody didn't think that through.
The best part though was whenever she married J. Jonah Jameson's dad. You know what I mean? Well, I know you eye rolling, but I thought that was the funniest thing. 1 second. I'm gonna tell her good night. 5 seconds.
I'm like waving to the youngin.
Be right back.
I was too. I was like, I guess it would hype her up if she came on camera to say goodnight.
I guess it would too.
Because then we would all talk to her, and then it'd be another 30 minutes before she goes to bed, and then Nick's the family, his family would be in turmoil. His wife would be mad at us.
I'm back.
Honestly, it would be longer than 30 because I would do everything I could to get her wound up. We're looking at a good hour before she goes to bed.
Who?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
We were just saying it was smart for you not to bring her on camera to say goodnight because we would have wound her up.
Oh, she would get really timid, and then all of a sudden, I have a weekly call with my team on Fridays at 3:30, and she gets so excited because I pick her up from school and she joins, and she will cook for the it's the best thing in the world. She loves it. But anyways, what we're talking about?
What's it like to have your own team? I've never been that important.
Stressful. I didn't leave the office today. Normally I work from home, but today I didn't leave until 5:30, and it was which isn't late for some people, but anyways, it was just stressful because you're in this constant mode of trying to keep the peace and happiness and frustrations down and morale high. I think is the single hardest part of trying to be a manager.
It is,
in my opinion.
So why did they cast the way they did in the MCU? A couple of reasons. One, because I've never understood why in the comics Aunt May, his aunt, so close in age to his parents, why did she look like his great-great-grandmother?
Because they
wanted to convey that she was older, but so they made her look like ancient. In the movies, that's not what they wanted. They didn't want her to look ancient. They wanted her to look like she could be his aunt.
I mean, this Sally Field casting was better than what we had before. Because at least she was a little more believable as far as the aunt was concerned.
No, bro. The first aunt from McGuire movies, she was fantastic.
She
And I
was
actually
great, but she was more
Yeah, it
grandmother
was just
age.
an age thing. She was way too old. I mean,
I
that was
fought
my
Dustin on
grandma.
this before I read Spider-Man because he was pissed when what's her name was cast as Aunt May. She was like, she's too young. I'm like, dude, have you ever read the comic books? No. Well, then you shouldn't have an opinion on it then.
Correct.
But I've read the comic books now, and I like old Aunt May, and I get like logically it makes sense, and I don't have anything against her, but I still think if we're being comic accurate, Tobey Maguire's grandma was the best, or aunt. See, I say grandma,
Right? That's exactly
but you
right.
love her that way. You connect with her. You just
Okay,
want to be
so-
happy.
I do have a controversial Spider-Man question, but at least it's a controversial
Go ahead.
question in my mind. Who deserves more credit for Spider-Man, Stan Lee or Steve Ditko?
I think honestly, if you got into this nitty gritty with anything Stan Lee created, I would say easily 50-60% of that's the artist, based on what I understand the Marvel method and things like that, and especially what you're seeing with like Jack Kirby's Fantastic Four work. I think, yeah, obviously Stan Lee created it and he told the stories, but if it wasn't for the character designs and the artwork that came from Ditko or Jack Kirby, they wouldn't be what they are. You know what I mean?
Lord
I
knows
think
in Spider-Man, Jack Kirby's
See,
Spider-Man was awful looking.
That was
Yeah.
a
Did you ever
well
see what he drew
educated
for
answer.
Spider-Man?
yeah, it was very rough. And I hated his Peter Parker. I just saw Peter Parker in for the first time. And I put this out there. I think Ditko was more creative in his artwork than Kirby.
Oh, yeah, he was. And it was a totally different direction, and it worked for
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I don't know that Ditko would have been great on Fantastic Four. He might have been, but he was
Yeah.
phenomenal on Spider-Man.
Yeah. And he started to get more creative as we've
Hey,
gone
have
on.
a good one, Kyle. Good to see you, man.
But yeah, if I this is gonna be so controversial. If we're talking about purely interiors, not covers, interiors, for me it's Ditko right now, based
Okay.
on what I've seen. And
That's
I'm
fair.
about the same, right? So I'm Ditko only did 30-something issues, 39, I think, and I'm right there at with Kirby. If we're looking at covers, I think I adore most Kirby covers. There's been very few Ditko covers where I'm like, oh, I need that in my collection. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or really, I think are iconic.
So, if you were to segregate the different eras of Spider-Man, what are a couple that stand out as your favorite?
So if we're gonna rank them, and if I'm gonna remove the fact that anybody should say Ditko Stan Lee should be the top, right? That's the given answer. What you should say. My favorite though is Michelini and McFarlane, without a doubt. I felt like what they did with Mary Jane, Peter Parker, the total artwork style change that Todd McFarlane brought in. I think he's the single most influential artist outside of Ditko who created. You know what I mean? So, hey, there's some fun facts, Keith. So 60. She's a believable 60.
I hate the internet.
I love it.
You're not wrong.
I love it.
So that's your favorite era. See, for me, it was the era that just preceded that.
Stern?
Stern and Ron Friends.
Ron, yes.
Ron Friends drew for me, like, I love Ramita. I love Buscema. I love their Spider-Man. And if I picture Peter Parker, it's still that Buscema, Ramita era Spider-Man. That's what Peter Parker looks like, right? And even his Spider-Man was a little bulkier.
Yeah.
But Ron Friends had this kinetic sort of connection to Spider-Man where he would draw the multiple Spider-Mans in one frame, like you saw the action of doing things. That he did better than anybody. The storylines during that time were great. I thought Gang War was one of the most awesome stories. I loved it.
Yeah.
The whole "Where is Spider-Man" thread, where Spider-Man was gone from his own book for a while there. That was awesome. That was really well done. The whole Hobgoblin saga.
I love Hobgoblin.
Phenomenal.
If I were to rank villains, he's top 3, I think. If not top 2.
So last week, Kay Lisa actually asked a really good question, and we're going to carry it over to this week with you. Pick one writer to write one Spider-Man villain, who would you pick?
One writer to write a villain.
Yeah, to write the
Yep.
villain.
If you're going to write a book about a villain, who would you want to write it?
That's tough. And
It
what comes to mind is Stern with Hobgoblin. But I think, and again, Josh isn't going to like this, but I think Michelini did a good job with some of his villains he brought in. And I, in my opinion, I didn't mind some of the weird stuff he brought in. But
now, when you say weird stuff he brought in, what do you mean?
like the totem, the other, that kind of weirdness that like there had never been any of that. You know what I mean?
The stuff that I hated was the stuff J. Michael Straczynski brought in.
What did I just say?
You said Michelini.
I'm thinking JMS.
Okay, yeah, I hated his crap.
Yeah, sorry. That's what I keep thinking. If I've been saying Michelini this whole time,
Yeah.
thinking I was saying JMS, I feel like a moron. No, Michelini and Todd, I didn't really care for like the whole, like Venom was cool and all, but for me, their run was great because of Venom, or not Venom, because of Peter Parker and Mary Jane. That's to me what made their run great. But see, I like JMS's stuff because I felt like there was real hope again.
I would have liked it had it been like an alternate universe for Spider-Man. If it was an Elseworld story where you have all this weird Wasp versus the Spider and all this stuff. But when you got to the point where Spider-Man wraps himself up in a cocoon, breaks out of himself, goes to the hospital, and kills Moreland with arm sticks that he suddenly developed, and then he sucks out his soul.
I'm not saying that part was great. I'm not saying that part was great. I'm saying Peter. If you haven't noticed, it's just who I feel like the best is whenever Peter Parker is happy with Mary Jane, right? Like that's my big thing, my big theme.
So
I always liked when it was them against the world, right? When, when other things are terrible, but they have each other, and I always like that, and I think that's what you're glomming on to too.
And that's because it's relatable, right? The world is tough, the world is hard, life is not easy, but you know that you have somebody. You hope you have somebody you can depend on, and for me it's obviously my wife and my family, and for most people that is, and everybody generally has a significant other at some point, and that's very relatable, and people love that. And if you don't, then it gives you something to look forward to or hope for and things like that, and that's also relatable. And clearly I'm just somebody who's a fan of comic book soap operas, I guess. I don't know, but I don't know. So but to answer your question, Alan, a villain. Oh, but you know what? Man.
See, my choice was
Let me see something.
My choice was to have Zdarsky write Sin Eater or have Tom Taylor write Kraven.
Okay.
That was what I was angling toward.
Tom Taylor on Kraven would make me very happy.
Kraven's kind of lame.
Oh, no.
We can talk about villains next. I think Kraven is an insanely lame character. Look, face value, I think he's interesting. The storylines he was given were always super lame.
Yeah, but look at
so you think Kraven's Last Hunt was lame?
Dude shot himself in the head at the end.
Yeah.
Like
with a shotgun, no less.
Well, I mean, look at what Tom Taylor has done with Nightwing's villains. He could do something with Kraven.
I think he would try to do something very weird and odd to try to one up the weird, odd stuff that's already happened with Kraven. I think it would be a disservice if I'm just giving my honest opinion. I think he does a good job thinking outside of the box and try to do things that are different and odd and weird. And I'm a huge Tom Taylor fan for a lot of his stuff, like his Deceased universe and Injustice. Very odd, outside of the box, not the normal. And I think he would do something like I think it would end up like what they did recently, where Kraven brought and had like all these kids come in and then they all killed each other and he was stuck with his one last kid. It was basically like a rehash of Kraven's Last Hunt. Yep. I think he would do something weird like that for me would land flat, right? Good thought process, but just poor execution maybe. And again, that's just me being not really a huge fan of Kraven as a whole, though. I felt like that's just my perspective.
That I really liked about that storyline was the dome over Central Park and everybody just having to fight it out.
That was a cool part for me. What kind of threw my mind is two people all of a sudden could collect all the biggest, sorry, I don't want to cuss, baddest villains in the world, and just the Taskmaster and who was the other guy were able to just capture and bring everybody in there, including that was to me a bit of a stretch.
Oh, that was more than a bit.
But what I will tell you, so back to your question. So I think Stern did a good job. And you guys are going to be shocked, especially if you know how much I hated what he did. But I think Jerry Conway did a very good job writing Green Goblin.
I did too.
God,
You
and I
hated it
hate to
because he
announce
killed
that.
off Gwen.
Yeah, he's a total
Had he not
beef
done
for
that, you would have thought he was brilliant.
Yeah, he would be top 3 writers. I don't think I put him top 3. Maybe I did.
That was a glorious era of Spider-Man.
He did a good job.
It was fantastic. Fantastic. So,
yeah.
So that's some top era stuff. What are some of who are a couple of your favorite villains? Especially maybe if there's some surprises, like you went into it like I didn't know who this guy was, but now I think that's a pretty cool dude.
Well, so villains for me, and again, like if you notice, I'm never like a huge villains fan. It's always like I'm always the pro hero guy. So like an example of that would have been Silk. Turned out to be a huge fan of Silk, and I probably would have thought she was stupid. What is it? September, so 10 months ago, I would be like, no, Silk is stupid. But now I own her first appearance. I think she's great. So that example would be a good one. I think it was more so what I was disappointed by and disliked versus going in. So like Green Goblin, I was excited, but I did really fall in love with that character and thought that was amazing. And that's why I bought his first appearance and stuff like that. The Vulture fell so flat for me that really did shock me how bad that one was. Hypno Hustler. No, man, it's the speed skater or whatever they called him.
What was it? Was epic.
Let's talk about Vulture for a minute. What in the world is going on with this 75-year-old hawk razor thin dude calling himself Vulture but wearing a green costume for some reason? What kind of Vulture is that? He never made sense to me, and that's why I thought the take that they did on him in the Tom Holland movie was superb. That made
much
sense
better.
To me. I bought that.
Yeah, no, this weird, I can't use the word I want to use, genitalia looking old man in the comic books, just, dude, I mean, it literally turned me off so hard from the Vulture. And even Doc Ock was the way. Another one was Kingpin. I knew Kingpin was important into the comic books for Spider-Man, but I always saw him as a Daredevil character because of the Daredevil show.
Sure.
And I fell in love with Kingpin. I bought his first appearance based purely on the cover, but I'm so glad I own that now because of how much I really do enjoy the character. And my favorite moment, and that's a good one, right? Kingpin is not somebody I really cared about, but I do really love. I actually bought his little action figure if my daughter didn't take it.
I like your TIE fighter back there, by the way.
Oh, yeah. You want it? You can have it.
So let's talk about that later because that looks awesome.
Okay. I bought the little Kingpin figure from Jeremy at his booth this year. But my favorite moment between him and Peter Parker or Spider-Man was whenever he broke into the jail after Kingpin had his Aunt May shot.
That was one of the only good parts from that whole storyline, and that part was amazing.
Gave me chills. He's like, look, do you want me to turn?
I've been holding back this entire time, and I'm not holding back anymore.
And he said, this isn't Spider-Man. This is Peter Parker beating your butt. And he walks into that jail, beats him like a dog, and says, it won't take but a second for me to just, your whole insides, you're done. And he's like, he had his organic web shooters back then, I guess. They changed it for like the Tobey Maguire movies. And he's got his hand stuck in Kingpin's throat. And I'm like, dude, I love it. That might be one of my top like 5 or 4 favorite moments from all of Spider-Man.
Oh, that was an amazing scene because when you realize that the reason that he hasn't been as successful is because he's holding back.
Yes.
And when he finally let the dogs loose, it was like, oh my gosh. It was amazing for us to see because we never get to see it.
No, ever. And I think that is actually, they do Spider-Man a disservice. They make him look a lot weaker than he really is a lot of times. So that, but especially early on, if you look at what, how Stan Lee and Ditko would put in the back of the books, Spider-Man is this strong and he can do this and that. And this is where he would rank on the strength chart. Like they really do Spider-Man a disservice, especially now. Another one, I just pulled up all the big list so I can make sure that I remember them all, but Black Cat, I adore that character, and I know
Oh,
she's
love
technically an
her.
anti-hero.
I had such a crush on her. I
I
love that
see
she loved
why.
Spider-Man, but she couldn't stand Peter Parker. She's
Yeah,
like, Spider-Man is cool, and that talks to your whole theory that they're two different characters, right?
yes, they
This
100%
dude
are.
is cool. He's hip. He's
Yeah.
fun. He's jumping around all over the place. Peter Parker, ugh.
Yeah, and if you were to describe Spider-Man, at least what he should be, not what they've bastardized him into, I don't think that's a bad word.
It's
Maybe
not.
it is. Okay,
It's not.
so
We're after 8 o'clock.
say that again. Okay, is
We're
that your
after
role
8
here?
o'clock.
After 8, we're good.
Yeah, after 8.
But
Oh,
with
yeah.
Spider-Man, he's a smart alecky, just punk, and will sit there and call you fat and dog you all day long while he's beating your tail, but has the heart and courage of a lion. And then Peter Parker is this self-unsure weirdo who's just a big nerd, and all he wants to do is love Mary Jane and do what's right, or Gwen Stacy and do what's right. And no matter how hard he tries to do that, this other guy, Spider-Man, always keeps him from doing it, right? And I think that's what Marvel's missing. And I don't know what your guys' opinions are on that, but I feel like
100% agree.
that's the sauce that Marvel has been missing for decades at this point. 20,
Yep.
25, 30 years. Or not really 30. We're not that close, but I would say maybe a good 26, 7 years, maybe?
Yep.
Like 95-ish, 96,
Correct.
if I remember right.
Yep.
And I swear to God, if they would get Akira Yoshida off of things and put somebody else who truly loves Spider-Man, the things they could do. I mean, it's heartbreaking.
If you want a Spider-Man story, a modern Spider-Man storyline that is literally Spider-Man and MJ versus the world, Hope, the whole 9 yards, get the Renew Your Vows graphic novel.
I have it saved on my right here on my app, and I'll tell you why I've not read it. Because it's there, and I have 2 other things. It's
going to tick you off that they could have done that and they didn't.
Yeah.
No, it's more so that's the last thing I have. Right? Think about that. I've read everything else.
Read it.
No, that's exactly how I feel. It's the last thing I know I'm really gonna love. And I feel like once I read those it's something else Logan, my brother-in-law, told me to read. But I feel like once I read those 2, I'll have nothing left.
So they did the 6-issue miniseries, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those, the end of it, you're kind of, I'm glad I'm sitting here by myself.
Exactly.
That was a little too much. And then they did, I want to say it might have been, I don't know, no more than 25 issues of like an ongoing Renew Your Vows. And it wasn't as good as the miniseries, but it was still a good, fun read. I mean, it was still MJ, Spider-Man, and at this point, Annie Mae, versus the world, trying to find their place. It was really good.
Yeah,
but
and like I said,
forget, you've also got Spectacular Spider-Man and Web of Spider-Man to read.
So I've still read a bunch of those in and out, just with a lot of the tie-ins, but a lot of that also isn't on the app, so they don't have all of Peter Parker and all of Web. So that would be something I'd have to probably like trade hunt or something like that, and I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Well, Web's only about 130, 140.
Yeah, it's not very many. But I don't know if I want to like go search it all out to read it, in a trade, because it's not all on the apps.
You could just do the entire run. Buy it.
I'm not that guy anymore.
First. I know a guy that owns a comic book store in Madison that would love to help you track those books down.
So between Dustin and I, so when we used to buy collections, we've had tons of those. And at one point, Dustin, I believe, collected them all pretty close to it. But it's just so difficult for me to sit down and read, because I read so late at night. Literally, I'll read till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, right? And then I have a hard time reading throughout the day because of Ellie, work, everything else. So like from 10 till like 2, that's my reading time, and Sky's asleep. So I can't really be flipping through a trade paperback. But really, I mean, that's really the only reason I haven't read Renew Your Vows, is because it's like that last bite of cake, and once it's over, it's over. So you just kind of, like, maybe I'll drink some coffee for a minute, but that's I know that's going to break my heart, knowing that there's like nothing left for me to read that I know I'm going to love.
So there's another aspect of that storyline that you're going to fall in love with.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, this is one of the best ones that I've read. And it's the whole being a father of a little girl.
Yeah.
That's what's going to get you on that storyline.
And Logan told me about that. And I also thought that was terribly dumb in the Clone Saga. Like, all of a sudden, we're going to kill your baby. No, we're going to steal your baby. Nope, we're going to kill it. That was just So dumb. Anywho's, but then there's also Spider Girl, which I believe is May Parker or Mayday, whatever they call her.
Right. May Parker, but they call her Mayday.
Yeah. So Logan read that and said it was pretty solid. So
it was absolutely solid.
But
Tom
I also have a hard
DeFalco
time
and Ron Friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Very neat. I did not know that. I also have a hard time with the Spider-Verse stuff too. I'm kind of like, oh, I like it, I don't. And I think a lot of it is because they put such a focus on all these other Spider characters, which is totally fine because I think a lot of people do love it. But I feel like, man, they've just done, and it more so is I feel like they're doing a disservice to Peter Parker. Like they're not putting the best talent on it. And honestly, I'm almost wondering if they're not putting the best talent on it because nobody wants to touch it. It's like one of those things is like you're danged if you do, danged if you don't.
Man,
you know what I mean?
If I had the time to sit and write comics, I would love to tackle Spider-Man.
I would love to do a fan art.
I would luxuriate in that. Yeah. I know that world. I love that world. Yeah. Man, that would be phenomenal.
Think of it like this. If you're a writer, say you're a new writer that's just getting started out, and they say, hey, we just come off the heels of what we've called the Spider-Man Beyond. We're going to give you the title now. You're going to run screaming the other direction. Beyond was god awful, and they ought to be ashamed.
Oh, that was hideous. Yeah.
Honestly,
about it is, I actually like the Ben Reilly character.
I think a lot of people do, and that was miserable. I mean, what got me and took me out of the entire storyline is the line, and I say it every time this comes up. Beyond, you're going to send a cease and desist issue or letter to Miles Morales and think that dude's actually going to care, or we're supposed to believe he does care. Like, and I guess it was like their weird way of like, Marvel they'll do some things, and it's like maybe they're trying to like say this is their take on capitalism and capitalism's bad, or like whatever. Maybe that was kind of what they were trying to do with it, but as a multi-billion-dollar company. But like the whole thing was just so weird and so strange, and like your big reveal at the end of that was the Goblin Queen or the Queen Goblin, whatever it was, because I know there's a Goblin Queen and then one's a Queen Goblin. But again, another derivative character. Like Menace was terrible. The third Hobgoblin, terrible with that goofy laugh. Red Goblin, terrible. This new Queen Goblin, terrible. And then you're going to turn Ben Reilly into Chasm. Stupid.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, and Norman Osborn is becoming the Gold Goblin.
Yes, and he's a good guy because everybody has to have a redemption arc. Norman Osborn's an evil, terrible human being. J. Jonah Jameson is an evil person deep down. I don't know
if he's evil, but he sure is petty.
Petty, and that's also J. Jonah Jameson is the quintessential. That's my answer to your question. The one villain that surprised me more than anything else, J. Jonah Jameson, because he is the best Spider-Man villain. There is not another one. And if you've only read modern comic books, modern Spider-Man, you may not get that or understand that or even think that. But for hundreds of issues, J. Jonah Jameson was the Spider-Man villain.
And then recently they turned him into Spidey's best friend.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I was able to get through that.
Yeah.
When they did, and I did really enjoy the way they did the Peter Parker slipping into a coma, Ben Reilly taking his place. I liked the way that was written. I thought that was very well written, the way they did that. But then, like 3 issues later, I'm literally at the shop going, man, I got to drop this garbage. I can't take it anymore. This is awful. I'm like 3 issues into Beyond. I'm like, this is awful.
It's so sad, man, because people who are coming in to read Spider-Man comics, and if that's all they know, if that's all I did was come in and pick it up thinking, oh, I'm going to love Spider-Man, I mean, they should be ashamed.
That's one of my most painful things is when kids come in and they want me to point them to Spider-Man. And I'm like, they're like, why are you giving me this really old stuff?
Yeah.
Like, because that's Spider-Man. Yep. The new stuff, you're
like
not going to like it. And I want you to like Spider-Man because Spider-Man is awesome.
Yep.
It's very painful. It's extremely, extremely painful. So what are a couple of things that, if you were going to say just the downright bad, what's just bad?
So sorry, I was trying to find a panel from Dan Slott's recent AF1000. I was going to show you guys and talk about that too. So absolutely, like, what do you mean by bad? Like, worst.
What just struck you as like why?
The last 25 years.
It can be a storyline. It could be the last 25 years.
If I were to sum it up, it would absolutely be the last 25 years. But the one moment where I thought I was done with, Alan's gone. He's like, no, I'm
Something
done.
happened.
He might be bored of us.
He can't stand to hear whatever's so bad.
But there is one moment where I honestly thought I was going to quit reading Spider-Man. And I've said it already, but it was the fact that I had spent months reading Spider-Man, and you get to the Clone Saga, and they're going to tell me that the Peter Parker I've been reading all this time has actually been Riley, and it's not been the real Peter Parker this whole time. And I don't know why, but that ran all over me. I was very upset, and it literally felt like everything I'd read before was just for naught. You know, it wasn't really Peter Parker. Like from what 130 something until the 90s was
for like 137.
Yeah, all of that was just worthless time spent because it wasn't even Peter Parker.
So let me ask you this. That was after you had read it for a few months. Now, imagine that you had been reading Spider-Man for 20 years.
Decades. Yeah. Oh, no, at that point it would have been, almost 30, right? I think that was around the 30th.
Well, I'm pointing to my own personal experience.
Oh, you don't? Yeah.
I had been reading Spider-Man since 1982.
Yeah. Dude, that would have broke my heart. Then I was able, within a day or two, realize, it was it retconned. But, that was probably a year for you guys? 2 years,
it took
maybe?
forever. Yeah, that went on forever. They were going. It was originally going to be a short-term story. And when it got where they were going to wrap it up, it was selling really well.
Yeah.
And they were like, let's keep this going. And so they extended it by half and dragged it out even further. And then all went downhill. So you get to a certain point in the story and you're like, this is really good. And then you go, what just happened?
Yeah.
And you get some of those Tom Lyle covers. Where Spider-Man in the rain and all this stuff, where it was just spectacular. The art was good. The story was good. Mm-hmm. And then the whole thing just went. And you're like, wait, you can't do this. This was going to be a great story until you showed me that this is where you're going. And heck no, you cannot do this. This shall not stand.
And it was so bad. Like editors were quitting, writers were quitting. What's his name? He ended up, what is this? He was one of the editors, ended up just quitting off the book because he was tired of what he was being told to do. It was really, after you read into it and really dig into it, it was, a sad situation all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
But
so
I would
what are
say
some things that you would just describe as ugly? Like maybe it was a good idea, it was terribly executed, or maybe it was a bad idea, terribly executed. But what's something you would just say, why in the world? What is this?
So the Totem storyline was very interesting, but Moreland, all of that. Again, I like I keep saying Michelini. I like JMS's era for the Peter Parker and Mary Jane aspect of it. But what he did there was very weird because he literally changed the entire lore of Spider-Man, everything, and ultimately set up for the Spider-Verse. If you really think about it, with the Weavers and that whole thing.
But I didn't hate it conceptually. I just hated it applied to the core Spider-Man book.
Yeah.
If you were going to do this as an Elseworlds thing, I'd be all about it.
Oh, this is one I think a lot of people dislike. Superior Spider-Man was kind of that decent idea, but just not for me really a solid execution.
I would have liked that had it been for a couple of issues.
Yeah.
But they dragged that out forever. And I'm like, I can't stand this.
Yeah.
No, that one made me angry.
And I've never been I had not really been a Doc Ock fan at all, period. So for me, it was just like, okay. Again, concept-wise, like a 6-issue mini arc. Okay, cool. That's cool. Spider Island, also, that's one Justin really likes. Did not care for it. That's the one where
that went on forever too.
Yeah, and that's the one where everybody just developed spider powers, and I did actually think it was kind of neat to see Mary Jane and that kind of be flipped on its head. And there was actually, let me see if I can't pull it up, but there was something Green Goblin said at the very end. It was in the last panel or two that made the whole thing worth it. But that was for me not a really fun. Honestly, half of Dan Slott, 99% of Dan Slott's run was ugly. A lot of people are like, "Oh, Dan Slott's phenomenal writer." I'm like, look, quantity does not mean quality, and that Joker missed all of the quality aspects of things. I think he was just.
And I'll be honest with you, that's the thing that bothers me the most. A lot of people don't care for Mark Bagley. I don't know why. I think Mark Bagley draws a heck of a good Spider-Man.
He does.
And I like it. It's got an energy to it and a bounce.
Yes.
And I love the way he draws Spider-Man. Well, he's got this upcoming series. It's called Spider-Man.
Yep.
And I'm really looking forward to it, except for one small problem.
Dan
Dan
Slott's
Slott
right.
is writing it.
I won't pick it up. I wouldn't read it for that. I mean,
I'm like,
I might just to say
man,
I have, but
I mean, I'll give it a shot, but that man has zero equity with me. He
Yeah.
ruined Spider-Man. He took Spider-Man and drove it into the dirt.
He absolutely did. And there were small moments where you had hope.
Small moments, and that was just enough to keep you going.
Yeah. Yes.
And you're like, "Oh, this is gonna get good." Nah, never mind.
So, and actually, let me see. And I posted this up the other day, because I've dogged on Dan Slott quite a bit. If people haven't noticed, but I did really appreciate what he did. And let me see if I'll share my screen if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
But this moment is the only time I felt like in God knows I shared it on the wrong thing. Sorry. The only time in Dan Slott's what happened?
Look at the comment.
Oh, I'm off. Sorry. Let's see. What was the
It says,
comment?
"Hey, look at the goober they got on here this week," and it's from Two Brothers Comics.
I'm the best part.
That's right.
All right.
How you doing, Dustin?
So this is from AF 1000, and this and there was a little bit before and after, but like just to give it some context, he is 60 years into being Spider-Man at this point. Mary Jane's old, and he gets shot, I think is what happens, and he ends up in the hospital. And so he's kind of just sitting there all alone, and it's very sad and somber. And Mary Jane shows up, and I actually have another panel, I think, or maybe it's not Mary Jane, or maybe I don't remember exactly. But anyways, everybody in New York shows up to say what they think is goodbye to Spider-Man. All right. And so I'm sitting there reading this. My brother-in-law Logan handed this to me, and it's like a middle day at like 12 o'clock, and I start flipping through the story. He's like, "No, you really should read it." I'm like, "It's Dan Slott. I don't want to." And he said, "No, just read it." And when I realized what's happening on the panel before, that everybody shows up for him to say goodbye and talk about, and they go one by, they start off kind of lining up and coming in and saying goodbye to him. And when I saw that happen, I had to stop. I handed the tablet back to Logan. I was like, "No, I can't read this. I'm going to sit here and start crying in the middle of a day over a Spider-Man character." And it was the sweetest moment in all of Spider-Man, probably, is everybody in New York shows up to say thank you. And they, and if I'm not mistaken, they tell him like, "Oh, you saved me from this." And it's not every single, they don't tell it all, but all of New York shows up to say goodbye. And he ends up leaving, and he's fine, and everything's, and it's his birthday of all days too, right? Because it ties into the 60th anniversary. But that's the only moment from Dan Slott's run where I'm like, wow, this was brilliant. And also Humberto Ramos drew it, so I'm a big fan.
Humberto Ramos draws for me the most interesting Venom.
Yeah. It's almost cartoonish Venom, in a weird way.
Well, it's like he's just pure liquid, right? And he's this malevolent liquid force. Mm-hmm. And so the way that he over exaggerates and stretches him out, and often he gets rid of the legs, and he's this base, that's coming. It was impressive. I always kind of liked Humberto Ramos, but didn't just love his art.
It was later on in his runs where I truly fell in love with his stuff because it changed.
Yeah. It did. But he did the over-exaggerated cartoony look, which I want in some things, but I didn't want in my serious Spider-Man book.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very, at first, because Logan told me I would really like it. And I'm like, no, I don't think I don't really like it so far. He's like, just give it some time. And then Tom Price mentioned some of his influences and how things changed for him. And you could really pick it up and see. But I do genuinely like the way he draws, 95% of his stuff. But speaking of ugly and artists, I always thought it was so silly that people gave JR such a hard time for his artwork before I read Spider-Man. And I was going off of what I knew kind of his early stuff, which was good. This was fine. I'm like, why are you guys giving him a hard time? It looks fine. And then you start seeing how truly terrible he's become. And you just want to walk up and give the man a hug and ask him what he's doing. Like, what can I do? Like, would a hug help? Because it is two different people drawing. You know what
Well,
I
I'll
mean?
tell you what happened, in my opinion, anyway. At one point in the 90s, there was this big article about how quickly he could draw comic book
Yeah.
pages. And like they even put him on a table out in Times Square and had him drawing pages
Yeah.
just. And he got this thing into his head that I can make as much money drawing super fast and crappy as I can slow and good.
Yeah.
Like he's a very capable artist when he wants to be.
Yes.
But he chooses not, and that makes me even madder because he chooses to just phone it in, or in these days just fax it in, and it's definitely speed over quality. And he has this, even back in the day when I was a fan of his stuff, like his Punisher Warzone was really good.
Yeah.
But when all his characters have always kind of had this very odd two-dimensional feature to them where they kind of look like they're rolling up at the edges.
Yeah.
Like it's a poster that's just, it's not flat on the wall. It's just kind of rolling up on it. It's this odd thing that happens, and I don't know how he achieves that effect. But it's not a positive effect. I knew what you meant there. But yeah, he churns it out, and it's better than I can draw, but it's not as good as he can draw.
No. And
that's
especially
what bothers
recently, me. If you look at his most recent run that's happening, what is it now, I think?
Yes, current.
I mean, dude, it's pitiful.
And it's also a matter of style, too, right? Like certain artists have a good style for a certain book. Him on Punisher Warzone was great because he drew this blocky Punisher with a broken nose, and his Spider-Man is blocky. All of his women are kind of blocky.
It's just
everybody's blocky, and Spider-Man is not a blocky character. No. He's a graceful, fluid, moving character.
Fluid was the word I was about to say.
Yeah, and that's why Ron Friends was so good.
Yeah,
his Spider-Man always was so fluid.
Yeah,
love Ron Friends. Like Todd McFarlane, his Spider-Man wasn't fluid. He just was like quadruple jointed.
It was dynamic.
He was very dynamic. But it's like his legs could just bend at whatever angle, right? It was like it didn't matter.
But he's a Spider-Man. You see what I did there?
I did.
Spider-Man.
So there was a comma. That was good.
After almost 1,000 issues, totally from someone's perspective that has read every single one of them, in your opinion, what is the best thing that happened to Spider-Man in all these years, and what is the worst thing that's happened to Spider-Man in all these years? Whether it's a story or an artist, or
I can answer this as soon as you said best thing to ever happen to Spider-Man, and I'm gonna feel like I'm betraying myself. David Finch is phenomenal. Best thing in the world to ever happen to Spider-Man was Mary Jane. And a lot of people don't know that, but
wow, I find that a surprise answer considering how much I know you love Gwen Stacy.
Yes,
I'm
the worst thing to ever happen to Spider-Man is Jerry Conway and his killing of Gwen Stacy. So it's I think both of those things.
I tell you though, that story rocked the world.
Oh, if that would have been me, back then.
Imagine you had to wait a month to read the next issue.
I would have definitely written a letter. I've thought about
it would have been 2 months because back in the day it was books were coming out every other month.
Yeah.
Imagine having to wait that long to read the next issue.
It would have broke my heart because I fell so in love with that relationship. And that's why The Amazing Spider-Man to me is such a special movie, because Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are the best interpretations in my mind of Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, for sure, without a doubt. Their chemistry, their relationship, everything about it was what in my mind you really want. And I know people like Toby and what's her name, but I went back and rewatched them and I felt like they were I don't feel like the chemistry was as strong. Yeah, somebody asked me the other day on Instagram, they were like, straight up asked, they were like, so Spider-Man can't have any new ideas? Because I was complaining about Gold Goblin. They're like, so Spider-Man can't have any new ideas? It should just end? And I was like, they might want to consider it, actually. They should just wait off for a minute and maybe
new ideas, yes. Terrible ideas, no.
Yeah. It's wild,
I mean,
dude.
they really should do an examination and wonder who
Yeah.
wants to see a reformed
Yeah.
Green Goblin as a Gold Goblin who
Yeah.
is upset that, and he's trying to get away from the whole Goblin thing. And why are people calling me Goblin? Like, maybe because you're still flying around on your stupid glider and you're still acting like a Goblin to me. Come on.
Yeah. It's and you're gonna give and honestly, the worst thing to happen to freaking Spider-Man might be the last 25 years. And especially recently, where you're going to do spider eggs and animatronic emoji faces on your Spider-Man mask. Stupid. That happened, what, an issue or two ago? Anyways.
Yeah, that was extremely stupid.
But I was really shocked, though, that Mary Jane wasn't such a pivotal character until a long while later. I mean,
it took a long time.
Years and years.
Yeah, it took a long time.
And even Gwen Stacy wasn't, right? Because she first appeared, what, in the 30s in Harry?
31, 32, yeah.
Yeah. I own those. That's what I did, is I went out and bought all my favorite characters' books.
Mary Jane didn't have a first cover appearance until number 57.
Yeah, it was way late. But yeah, so best and worst, definitely Mary Jane's the best thing that ever happened to Peter Parker. Worst is Jerry Conway thinking that he was cool and killing Gwen Stacy. But without that, then you wouldn't have the love stories you have with Gwen or with Mary. So,
well, that heartbreak was part of what made Peter Parker so compelling, right?
Yeah.
Because he was absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
Absolutely devastated. And that heartbreak really drove that home. Yeah. And so it made the story all the more when he finally realized Mary Jane was standing there and she had been trying to make those overtures for all that time.
Yeah.
And he finally was like, I think I'm past the whole Gwen thing enough to where I can see this now. I mean, that was incredible.
Yeah.
That whole era was just amazing.
It was. And it really became a cornerstone for, Spider-Man and Peter Parker's core philosophy of, no matter how long or no matter what it takes, nobody will ever die again, while I'm Spider-Man. And that really became his core philosophy. And, and the way he treated and dealt with villains, I'll never kill. And it was definitely a big piece that kind of people compounded on over and over again. But geez, I just hated it. I still
those moments with Spider-Man, like the death of the death of Gwen Stacy for one, but the death of Uncle Ben. And when you realize his whole origin hinged on he could have stopped that. Yeah. And he didn't. Think of the guilt. Yeah. Holy cow, the guilt. But that's where he started. And so he starts in that horrible place. And then he goes on and he's got this whole thing going with Gwen, and then he loses Gwen. But that turns him into, and that was like a catalyst that sprung him into the character that he became. And I thought he was very, very strong as a character as a result of that. And again, like we talked about earlier, I thought the Black Cat was a phenomenal introduction and a foil to Mary Jane. Yes. And don't get me wrong, like, it should always be Peter Parker and Mary, but like Silk was a little bit different for different reasons. And if you know, you know. Black Cat, I thought was, just, she was hilarious. She was wild. She was nutty. The way anything I've read her in recently and what they're kind of doing with her now, I don't think is really doing it justice to what she was. It's not. It's this weird fanfic. Honestly, I feel like the last 20 years has been nothing but these writers and editors fan fiction of things. But it's very intriguing to me what they've done. And I really as soon as I read the stories, was around like she first appeared 198, and then I think that's right? Black Cat's first appearance was 194 and 195. Okay. And forgive me, guys, I'm not like the greatest with remembering numbers. I just know the range. But like up until that, and then I immediately was like, okay, I really need her as a character, right? As a comic book, and that comic book, because I love the character. If I went out and bought the comic book, like I loved that character. So that one shocked me as a villain. But really, I can't think of another love interest other than Silk, Black Cat, Mary Jane, and Gwen that were interesting. The rest of them that they did. Betty Brant was never much. No. That was never for him. And then these new ones, like, what was her name? Carly. And like the last,
Like honestly, if you had only read Spider-Man in the last 22 years, you wouldn't know jack crap about any of the really good love interests. All you would know is like Carly Cooper and that weird one that's like the police officer's sister that ended up going to jail and I think ended up turning into the Menace, or maybe I have that a little bit backwards. But anyways, yeah, like I would be. I really wish people would just go back and read Spider-Man and not rely on the last 22 years because you're missing out.
So are you still reading Spider-Man, or are you just like, I'm done, I can't take anymore?
No, I'm gonna just batch read them. I'll wait for a couple to come out, read them at one time. I'll stay up to date with the stories because it's gonna be like I spent 8 months of my life every single day reading Spider-Man. I can't not be able to say I've read every Amazing Spider-Man issue.
So is there anything Spider-Man related coming up that you're looking forward to?
Absolutely not.
So not even. I mean, we both know that you're going to be there the second the shop opens when the Gold Goblin comes out. But what about Spider-Man: The Lost Hunt? Have you looked into that any?
Is it doing with Craven?
Yes.
Then probably not. Again, I don't think Craven's a very interesting character. I'm just being very honest. In my like, he's just not very interesting to me. And I like the concept, right? This vicious hunter who is like his whole, and I liked it early on a little bit, but he was never truly an interesting character to me, if I'm being honest.
I thought what made him really different was like a lot of the villains are like they're bank robbers.
Yeah.
They're this, that, or the other. Craven just wanted to kill Spider-Man and mount his head on the wall.
Yeah.
And you're like, what, you want to do what?
Yeah, that's it. That's like,
that's why he was there. That's what he wanted to do. There was no other goal. That was it. And that made him terrifying to me.
Yeah. But, and again, when you read it, you were younger, right? Whenever you first started reading.
True. Yeah.
So maybe that was a little bit different for me. It wasn't so much that, and I just felt him. I don't know. I just found him kind of uninteresting. But that won't stop me. That whenever they turn Craven into this weird, animal protector,
environmental activist who's a friend of animals, like that is not Craven. Craven is killing those animals. I
will be
His
livid.
Jacket is made out of a lion's head,
split in half.
I mean, Craven's a vegetarian now, right?
Something like that. Like he's probably going to be like at Cal.
I mean, you can't tell me that doesn't look awesome.
It may look awesome, but this is what the third iteration or fourth iteration of Craven's Last Hunt, and I guess continuation, so to speak. And hell, is this even this isn't even Craven anymore? Isn't it his son?
Actually, this is going back to the origins of Craven. So this will be
go up to who's writing this. Is that showing up there? Because I believe that'll tell you everything you want to know.
J.M. DeMatteis.
Oh, okay. Okay.
DeMatteis, the same person who wrote Last Hunt.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe.
But you know why Spider-Man looks so cool there, don't you?
Because he's hanging there like a monkey.
No, because he's hanging there like Daredevil.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, go back to that because his arm looks about 15 feet long.
Right. Yeah. It's he's hanging there like a Spider-Man. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like his arms at this wonky angle because
Jesus Christ, dude, that is bad. That
is poor perspective, I will say.
So that's JR's foot bad.
Art is by Eder Mayes, but the cover is by Ryan Brown, which we know that once it comes out, there's going to be about 400 different covers that come out with it.
You know what's wild to me is comic book sales. Everybody's like, Marvel and DC are like, oh, our comic book sales are amazing. It's not because of the story you guys are putting out. It's because you're putting out 15 covers and people are really cover buying now, I think, more than anything.
I hate that.
Which hurts my feelings, man.
Right, because just get baseball cards.
Yeah. Well, and like if you want to cover buy, that's fine. I think, whatever. Like everybody buy comics your way. But I hate it from the perspective of the history of comic books that have been about this story. Mm-hmm. And it's not, it's turned away from that. And that really kind of hurts my feelings the more and more I dive into these things. Fantastic Four now and reading Spider-Man and in 3 or 4 years, I'll probably have read all of the big names, Daredevil, Hulk, Avengers, at least under Marvel. I do want to dig back into Batman, and I've spent a considerable amount of time on Golden Age Batman. But yeah, it really hurts my feelings that I feel like we're losing a bit of what made comic books special. It's spec game or cover buy. Very rarely do you hear somebody say, hey, I'm buying this because I absolutely adore this story. It's few and
Well,
far
I tell
between.
you what's the ones that are getting that are ones that achieve that, right? Were like Immortal Hulk
Yeah,
when that first came out, and that was going to that didn't have a bunch of covers. It didn't have
yeah.
a bunch of spec stuff. It was just good,
Alex Ross did the
and it
covers,
was
and those
impressive.
didn't hurt.
No, that doesn't hurt. But Zdarsky on
Yeah,
Batman and Daredevil
yeah,
both, people are reading that because it's good.
yeah,
Nightwing, people are reading
yeah,
Nightwing because it's good.
yeah.
There are those titles that people are reading simply because they are good and
But it's
not
few and
because
far between,
of
and I
spec.
hate that.
And that's sad. It should be
Yeah,
the vast majority of them.
all of them.
Um,
Yeah, if you're putting out a book, it should be because it's good and it has a great story, and you guys truly believe in it.
yep.
Not for any other reason. I mean, I can only think of a handful of stories over the years um, that I could say stand up to what I've read under Spider-Man or reading with Fantastic Four that hold up to that level of love and appreciation. I mean, I think Kanto is full of joy and happiness, and you can tell those two guys love what they're doing and love. And again, that's independent, and I think
Are you reading
Venom.
Once in Future?
I was, but I fell off because it turned too much into a monster of the week for me. I stopped around issue 12,
Okay, that's fair. I get that.
which was fantastic.
It's ending at issue 30.
Oh, is it?
That's the last issue of the story, and it's this whole run. And that one's, is it full of joy? No, but is it a super fun book? Yes.
But when I say joy, I don't necessarily mean the book itself is happy.
I know.
Like you could tell that.
You can feel it was made with love.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
See, I feel that way about Nottingham.
Nottingham's a great one. You can tell that guy really loves it.
And I mean, Nottingham is a fun read. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a legit adventure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way that it's coming across. But I mean, that's just to me. If we ever get the chance, I mean, I'm officially challenging Zdarsky to come on this show and defend why he thinks he can do what he's doing in Batman. I mean, 126, you're just like, you son, and then you want to throw it. 127, it's like
Because it ends in such a rough place. You're like, no, you can't do that.
I mean, he puts you right on the edge at every single issue, and then it just ends. The last page of 127, you're just kind of.
You know what's weird about Batman for me is I've actually read a considerable more amount than I give my I even think about. I've read all of New 52, all of Batman Eternal, a ton of Rebirth, a ton of Golden Age, and to think and you're saying kind of what's happening now, but I'm like, Golden Age Batman is not modern Batman.
Oh no, Golden Age Batman was goofy, weird, bizarre stuff.
But I loved it.
Oh, it was fantastic,
and
that's
now
why
they're
the
putting
characters
orgies
suck,
in the
right?
books.
Okay, so wait a minute. You've mentioned that before. That was literally like 2 panels that Tynan did. I mean, they should have never been there. I mean, granted, it was absolutely pointless.
I'm not saying that it's a consistent theme. I'm just saying that that's what you're doing, DC.
Not anymore, because Zdarsky is fixing everything that Tynan jacked up.
I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm gonna laugh. They have an orgy in the next issue. I will laugh my head off, and I will blow it up on a poster and send it to you.
Well, the only way they're going to be able to pull that off in the next issue is if it's amongst all the personalities that are running around Bruce Wayne's head right now.
Oh God, are they doing like Batman and Buried, where he's like messed up in the head?
No, you'd have to read it to kind of.
No, okay.
It all makes total sense. It's just like, oh my God, you can't do this. You're doing that. Oh my God, you can't. Oh, stop it. It has to be okay. Be okay. Please be okay.
I can't pick up another book right now to try to focus on reading. I can't do it.
When the person that shows up at the end of 127 that shows up, what was it said? Or it was something along the lines of just whenever he's near, you feel hope or something like that. You just feel it.
Spoiler alert, just say who it is and kind of give me a good idea. Spoiler alert for you guys who haven't read it.
Superman shows up at the end.
I say who generally is the person, the harbinger of hope in DC?
Superman. Well, who knows anymore?
The whole concept is, and it goes back to the storyline of Batman had a contingency plan for the entire Justice League.
Yep.
He has a plan to take out every single one of them.
Yep.
But what is the plan to take out Superman? I mean, to take out Batman. He basically come up with a plan to take out himself if the time came. but something has happened that has now triggered that contingency plan, and somehow, some way, he erased his own memory
so that the contingency plan would work.
so that it would work, and he could not stop it. But there's still one last contingency plan to take out Batman, and that is Superman. So now Superman has become the contingency plan to take out the contingency plan. And it's just brilliant the way he's written it.
It's intriguing.
He's done that.
It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that little sidebar bit with the person who had the plastic surgery and such.
And like, you never would have imagined that person would have had that many friggin' kids.
Right? What woman is on board with that?
Yeah.
That whole bit was fantastic. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
If you picked
saying
up,
yeah, like I read it.
If you picked up Batman and Daredevil, did you read Devil's Reign?
No, I haven't read
That was
any
so
of it.
good.
So
Any
if
of
you
Daredevil.
pick up the Devil's Reign graphic novel,
It's a
and then
6-issue limited series.
Yeah, and then you go right into Daredevil, the Zdarsky, because he wrote Devil's Reign, but then you go right into Daredevil 1.
Yeah.
Everything will make perfect sense, but I guarantee you that if you pick up those two titles, you will not be disappointed on any level whatsoever. They're actually worth the money.
Yeah. So
I agree.
Logan really wanted me to go back and read Daredevil from the beginning. I was like, I think I'm going to do FF. We'll do FF.
That's on my to-do list. I do want to go back and read that from the very beginning.
Daredevil or Fantastic Four?
Daredevil. I would like to do Fantastic Four one day, but
I'll
I really
tell
want
you.
to do Daredevil. My thing is, I'm just not fixing to go buy a brand new tablet right now just so I can go spend another $10 a month on Marvel Now just to read it.
Hey, I'm telling you, that is, and I don't want to turn this into a digital versus print conversation, obviously, but I will
That's
tell
good
you.
because I own a store.
That's why. Hey,
honestly, if you think about it, digital does have its place because the average person's not going to be able to go pick up FF1 or Daredevil 16 or whatever. I mean, so it gives them a way to actually go back and read those things.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's just reading at night. Yeah, I'm 5 issues behind Dustin. And as we get to the more modern stuff, we'll be able to catch up, no problem. So I wouldn't be super stressed. But I would tell you, Spider-Man versus Fantastic Four, the quality, like what I'm enjoying. I enjoyed Spider-Man much more, I think, so far. And FF4 is really good. It's intriguing. Hey, but it works.
Did you
Especially
say
if you know what we're doing.
FF4?
Fantastic Four.
You said FF4, as in like Fantastic Four?
Yeah.
Dang, I did do that, didn't I?
You did.
I'm having a moment like where I kept saying Michelini when I kept meaning JMS.
So how did you like that first appearance of Dr. Doom? You both have read that.
Oh, that might be one of my single favorite issues of comic books of all time.
Is that not the goofiest, weirdest thing you've ever read in your life? Like,
I was at the
time
beach
travel me back, and turns out the Thing is the origin story of Blackbeard. I mean, you're like, what is that? It was utterly bizarre, but it was brilliant.
I loved that so much, and you couldn't have told me in a million, or you could have given me a million guesses of what that story was going to be, and go, the Thing is actually Blackbeard, the pirate.
And how does that have anything to do with Dr. Doom showing up? But it does, and it's utterly bizarre, and it's fantastic.
I loved it so much. And I feel like if Marvel doesn't put that in the movie somehow, they have failed Fantastic Four. Even a reference, even if it's just like the Thing being stupid and like just throws on a Blackbeard, beard and a pirate hat. Just
even if he's just reading a book or watching a pirate movie.
Or has some like freaking a pirate chest near him, like something. There has to be an Easter egg for that. It was so fun. And honestly, Fantastic Four has definitely felt a little bit more. What he said. FF4 has definitely felt a little bit more lighthearted than Peter Parker or Spider-Man.
Yeah, it
There's a lot more
absolutely is.
levity there and goofiness, and I've enjoyed it. But my favorite part right now is where the Watcher shows up, and every single time it's like, I can't do this, but I can do this, and it's exactly basically what he just said he couldn't do. I cannot interfere, but I can.
But I can't stand in the way, which is what we call interference.
Yeah, it was the funniest crap in the world every time he shows up, and I look forward to it every time I see him pop up.
I love the friendship between Johnny Storm and Peter Parker.
I love that in Spider-Man, but in FF4,
Yeah.
it's not been much of anything.
Well, it hasn't shown up yet. I mean,
Yeah, I think they
FF4
just
came out 2 years before Spider-Man. Remember?
was it a full 2 years?
Just about, yeah.
So they just had Peter Parker show up in at Empire State, and Peter Parker was like, "I'm looking at going here," and they had a couple words back and forth, and that's when Kirby drew Spider-Man. I was like, or Peter Parker. I'm like, you're not too good at Peter Parker. But I'm excited to see that because I was really hoping I'd see more Spider-Man.
Well, the issue in it usually goes the other way. The FF shows up in Spider-Man more than Spider-Man shows up in the FF. But the issue where he loses his costume and all that stuff, and he goes over there and he swings home wearing a Fantastic Four costume with a brown paper bag over his head. That. Fan-freaking-tastic.
The bombastic, what do they call it? The bombastic Bagman or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
They need to make a hot toy of that. I would buy that.
Oh, dude, and that goes on for decades.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think I said in my last video I did about it was that Submariner is actually the best villain.
Oh, he is. He absolutely is. And in no small part because he's got totally the hots for Sue Storm, and she likes him back a little bit.
Oh, a lot.
Well, depending on the issue, yeah.
Yeah. I had no clue that was even a thing either.
Oh, my Lord, yeah. When they get into they relaunched a lot of books in the early 2000s with the Marvel Knights line.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a Fantastic Four, Marvel Knights Fantastic Four. Yeah. And like the first 15, 20 issues of that were superb.
That was Mark Millar, right?
I don't remember who wrote it.
Well, Mark Millar, I know, wrote Spider-Man.
Yeah. But the first 10, 15, 20 issues were superb. And there was a Namor story in there that was fantastic.
Really?
He was absolutely trying to steal Sue.
He wants him some Sue Storm now.
Yeah.
He does. I'm like, we could sit here and talk about all of these different things, and it, I don't know. And like now I'm kind of pumped up, and I'm like, maybe I should try reading the current Batman stuff. But I just don't have the time. I don't have the time to invest in trying to keep up with that one right now. I'll batch it.
Tell you what you do. You just come up to Haven, you pick it up, you sit on the couch, you read it, and then you take it home, put it in a box.
And then I can bring it back to you in a couple of years and say, here you go, resell it.
Sure. I mean, that works too.
It's the circle of life.
It's the circle of life.
But
when are you figuring you'll be finished up with Fantastic Four?
I actually have a spreadsheet. Give me a second. I'll tell you.
I actually have a spreadsheet.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What a nerd.
The reason
I'm not kidding either.
Look. Is I've got 3 different comic book spreadsheets on my computer too.
Yep. I rename, or I started with ASM, but yeah. Oh, is it not logged into this Google sheet? Let me see if it's on this one. But anyways, I run a spreadsheet so that I know every week kind of the number I need to be on. And if you know anything about Google, which I think you guys do, you have your personal, and that's linked to your, I think this one might link to the Two Bros Comics.
This guy needs a spreadsheet.
Who?
Your brother who is 16 issues behind?
Or actually, I screenshotted it. Let's see. But I did because I sent it to Dustin and Justin so they knew what to expect.
Oh, yeah. What is up with that? Because people are clamoring for an early Mufasa story? Come on. That spreadsheet is stressing me out, too.
I sent it to Dustin and Justin.
That's hilarious.
Now I'm having a hard time finding it. Let me see. Because I sent it to them and like, what is that? Oh, here it is. And it's done every 7 days. Oh, dang. This is a little bit stressful. How many total Fantastic Four issues are there?
I have no idea. There's a lot.
Is there like 600, 700, something like that?
Not as many as Spider-Man, though.
I think it's around 650, 700, something like
That'd
that,
be
right?
about right.
So say it was 700, that would put us being done April 27th, 2023. Which sounds like a long time away. But what'll happen is once you start hitting the modern stuff, you could read 10 issues a day in the same time it took you to read, a Silver Age book.
Right.
And literally, I could have been done with Spider-Man likely June, July of this year, but there was like 2-3 weeks on different points where it was so bad that I didn't read, or if I did, it was like the minimum of 3 issues, and I slugged along. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's how long it'll take. But Alan, why don't you? Daredevil's not nearly as bad. Why don't you just start with 2 issues a day until you get to the modern stuff?
Well, like right now at the house, I've got a Kindle.
Yeah.
I hate Apple. I will never buy an iPad. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm a Linux user myself. I despise all things Apple. So I just don't see a point in going and buying a new tablet right now, just for the simple, because I don't think Marvel Now is actually on the Kindle.
Marvel Unlimited? Yeah, I don't think
or,
so.
or Marvel Unlimited. And even on top of that, even if it was, I still wouldn't do it just because Kindles are so much smaller.
Yeah.
I've thought about it. I don't know. Maybe for Christmas I can talk Santa Claus into bringing me one. We'll have to wait and see.
My recommendation, and again, do whatever you can afford and stuff like that for anybody watching. Obviously, I don't want to put any pressure, but I started off with the original iPad, whatever, like it's just called the iPad. It'll get so much easier. But yeah,
it will. Yeah, those
Fantastic
early ones are pretty dense.
Fantastic Four is even more dense than Spider-Man.
Yes.
I mean, and sometimes it's just not as good, or maybe it's just my interest isn't as good there. But it has been very difficult. That's why I'm not stressing myself too much out about, and we had some stuff. But anyway, so I started off with the iPad, and it was good because it's pretty close to the size of a comic book, but it's still slightly smaller, things like that. And then I went out and bought the iPad Pro 12.9 inch. You see, I'm a fan. And this thing has been a massive game changer. If I were to grab, I don't want to get into my short boxes right there. I guess I'll have to. But just to compare it, the closer to a comic book size you can get, the better. And then with manga, Alan, for $1.99 a month, it'll actually perfectly display 2 manga pages right next to each other. So it's like you're reading a book. It's perfect there.
So have you done webtoons on that yet?
No, I haven't read much webtoons. I'm coming over here. It's been a while since I've read webtoons. It's honestly been since I started reading Spider-Man. Once I started with Spider-Man, my life just disappeared.
See, I'll go in spurts with a couple of the webtoons titles. Because they come out weekly.
Yeah.
So, or at least the ones that I have been reading will. And I might go 3 or 4 months and not read. And then I'll all of a sudden just, because a lot of those issues on there you can read in, like 5-6 minutes.
Yeah.
So then I'll just binge read a ton of them.
So see, literally, it's, wider, but they can put a full comic book page and it's the same size.
That is very nice, but I'm still not buying an Apple product.
Well, I'm saying, but you can get like a Samsung version.
Yeah. In fact, if you bring that to my house, you'll have to leave it on the front porch. It's not allowed in.
Dude, for a while I was not into the Apple stuff. I'm like, no, you commies. I'm not gonna buy into you guys. But it's impossible. It's such a perfect ecosystem. Everything from my TV and Apple TV to my phone to my watch to my Mac. I mean, it is all so seamless in my iPad. But what I really wanted to do, and I know it's gonna be so hard to get. Are we gonna see a weird moment where Alan comes running into the room with somebody's chasing after him?
That could be. I don't know. He did buy a Ouija board at a yard sale.
I'm not into this. I don't like scary moments. I feel like this is terrible.
No, I thought I heard the front door open, and like I said, I'm the only person here and supposed to be the only person here.
I was nervous.
I thought you were about to have a weird moment too, because
I was scared.
These little wiener dogs up and beat somebody with it.
I was terrified. I'm like, I swear to God, if this is a Scream thing, I'm leaving. I don't want no part of it.
My backup is your brother in Atlanta.
Dude, I don't like being scared. I don't like being nervous. I don't like being uneasy. I have cameras at every point in my house. I have a security system. I have more protection equipment pieces in areas that probably you shouldn't. I do not like the idea of being unsafe. And it started whenever I had a kid. That's when nope, we're 100% safe.
being a girl dad changes your philosophy on everything.
Yeah.
Christine, if I can find a garage sale a Ouija board, we will meet up at Nick's house and do it on the front porch.
Absolutely not. But
We can watch from his
um,
cameras.
what I've been wanting to do, and I'm trying to decide how I want to do it, but I would love to have like Jeremy or Tom or even like take it to a con and have people do Spider-Man sketches on the back of my iPad, because this is like, people do sketchbooks or whatever, but for me, this is like how I consume comic books now. It's very important to me. This would probably be, I say, one of the big things I would grab, but I have so many. But anyways, I use this more daily than I do my cell phone, right? But I think it'd be so cool to have iterations of Spider-Man drawn in here. But then, like, what if something happened and like the paint marker rubbed off or something? So then I thought about buying like a D brand skin that kind of goes on it, and that way I could save it. But then it worries me that like the case, even though it's like a really soft microfiber, might mess it up. So I don't know. I need to probably test that. But I think it would be so cool to have sketches on the back from artists and stuff. Oh, somebody's out front.
It's that demon from the Ouija board.
That's how I used to be. I used to tell my wife, like, I wish somebody would break into my house, and she'd go, "Why?" And then I'd give them the answer. And it's not like, thinking back on it, it's not exactly the healthiest answer. But now I'm like, I swear to God, please nobody come into my house.
What size tablet did you say that was?
This is 12.9 inches.
I mean, this isn't bad. I mean,
I know you probably don't know what that looks like, but
I'm looking at a Samsung 10.5 inches on Best Buy right now for $179.
What now?
Oh, I heard what you said. I just chose to ignore it. No, I'm looking at a Samsung Galaxy tablet.
Yeah.
Literally the latest model for $179 on Best Buy's website.
How many inches is it?
10.5.
Yeah, that's probably pretty solid, because you don't really need it. Like, that thing is made for like, people who are like true artists and like really want to. I'm just using it for a big screen. I don't need it to go like, that's got the M1 chip in it. Nobody needs that.
Yeah, I mean, we both know you bought it because you're overcompensating.
No. I bought it because I love reading comic books.
Now that we've gotten to that part of the show, next week's guest, guys, is Bart Sears. Comic book artist Bart Sears. That is going to be awesome.
But it's not as cool as this. I mean, think about it. This episode had it all: Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, The Hobbit. What more could you ask for? We could talk Star Wars. Huh?
We even talk Disney. Oh, if you want to talk Star Wars, we can talk about how Marvel's ruining Star Wars.
Thank you.
The only good thing that Marvel has out right now, Star Wars related, is Darth Vader. That is a solid title.
Oh, I thought we were talking about movies and TV shows.
Well, no, I mean, we all know they've been doing that for a long time.
BRB. Don't leave.
We're about to go on a rant, and he's like, "Be right back."
Oh no, it's to do with Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I've got to go, guys. I got to get back to work.
All right. Well, I won't do what I was going to do then.
You guys can stay on and keep going.
It is 9:00.
Yeah.
We're going to Atlanta tomorrow, so we should probably wrap it. What do you mean you got to go back to work?
Just trust me.
Is that what we're calling code naming that, Josh?
Oh no, it's work.
I got to go to work too.
Can we have a throwback to the old days, and can we get a magic trick?
All right, 1 second.
Why would you do that? Why would you do? Things were going so well.
Just so I could see the look on your face, and it did not disappoint.
Man. Magic tricks. Those are some rough nights.
What deck of cards do you want to use?
One of my favorite times was one night on Babylon. He goes, "Does anybody want to see a magic trick?" And Dustin and Justin both at the same time, no.
They suck.
And I'm literally in comments going, "I want to see a magic trick." There he goes.
They're terrible humans. I tell you that much. Yeah, and big in me. All right, ready?
Let's do it.
See, I can just pull cards up out of the air, just like. There you go.
Good enough.
No, here we go. Let's see. All right, Josh, you ready?
Sure.
All right, did you get a card?
Was
Or
I
do I need-
supposed to? You just asked me if
Oh
I was
yeah,
ready.
yeah. Sorry. Pick a card. Ready? This is kind of
Okay.
awkward to do. All right. You have your card in your head?
Yep.
All right. All right. I think I have it. Now, I have it right here. Is it that one?
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Was that not awesome? There was nothing wrong with that, Josh.
No, that was pretty awesome.
And he's not even lying, I think.
No, I'm not. That was pretty awesome.
I don't take you as a liar. I should have got you to announce it first. I'm a little rusty with the presentation. I should have gotten you to say, "What is your card, Josh?" And then I go, "Was it that one?" And then it's there. That would have been cool.
That's pretty good trick.
Yeah.
But,
All right, you're welcome.
Next week we have Bart Sears on, awesome artist who's been doing comic books forever. And a couple of weeks after that, on October 6th, we have AJ from Disney Food Blog coming on. So that's going to be awesome.
Still not as cool as Spider-Man, Lord of the Rings, and what else we talk about?
Fantastic Four and everything else. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to top a Nick Ellis.
Let's be honest. I may not be a food blogger, but I got a pretty dope mustache.
That's true.
And we all know that you're going to be tuning in with your wife to watch the Food Blogger.
Y'all, seriously, somebody needs to remind me because she'll be mad if I forget to tell her when it is.
Well, we will be sure to make the announcement.
She is
we
so
will
happy.
Publicize it.
She's kind of jealous, I think.
So we have got to schedule a Thursday night with Dustin because we've had Justin, Nick, and now we got to have Dustin. We got to.
What are you going to talk to Dustin about?
I don't know. I bet Dustin would enjoy a yard sale of Ouija board.
Nah, dude, he's like me. We're little B words. We don't like to be scared.
Oh, there you go. Your night's planned October 6th.
Yeah.
All right. She's going to put it on the calendar.
Yeah, she's very thrilled.
All
Josh,
right.
it has been a super duper time. What do you think?
I think it has been super duper. It's been great.
I mean, just super duper, just SDP, or no, SDD? Super duper. Yeah.
That sounds like, no, I'm not going to say what that sounds like.
Yeah.
Sounds like a wrestling move where you body slam somebody.
Yeah, we'll go with that. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I knew that was. I knew that's what it was.
This is like a borderline Babylon. We go 49 more minutes and we're Babylon territory.
Yeah, we're getting there.
But Josh has to go to work.
I do. I do. You guys have an awesome night. Thank you for anybody who is tuning in later and will be watching this on the rewatch. I appreciate you doing that. Don't get caught while you're at work. Hope everything is good. And we will catch y'all next time. I am going to play us out with this video, even though we're not a quiz show anymore. I still love this one, and it makes me happy. So.